Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Irregular Republic, episode 13. Today, I got a pretty awesome guest, PK Kelley, and we're going to be talking about some homeland defense, some irregular threats, and some of the things that are just kind of affecting, our nation as a whole, and go through kind of a security aspect of that. So, bring him up. How you doing, PK? What's up, man?
Good, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, awesome. Well, before we get started, I want you to kind of give an intro of who you are, your background, and then what you've been doing now, and then your consulting group and what you guys do, and just quick rundown of all that. And then we'll jump into stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll keep it brief. So PK Kelley, I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Grew up here. It's home. Lived in Northwest Arkansas after my time at 2nd Ranger Battalion for a bit. And when I was in Ranger Battalion, I spent all my time in Afghanistan. Actually, I never went to Iraq at all. One of the few guys that didn't go to both places, like a lot of them did, which to me played into things later, which is how the business came about and other things. I took part in the Afghan withdrawal, and in between that time, I spent time in law enforcement, which is a lot to do with how the business came to be, and kind of fill in some gaps that we saw in Homeland Security and that bridge between the military and what's happening at large overseas, and then what's happening domestically here in the United States as well. So that's kind of the real 30,000 foot view of the background. And then really the business evolved. It came out of, if you were to go look at our website, it even states, forged in crisis, that everything was built out of the Afghan withdrawal and off of this one simple idea, and really not even just idea, but as you know, with Team of Teams from General McChrystal, back in when he was in command of special operations, and really making it what it is today, I took that model and brought it to the civilian sector, to the private sector. And because there's so many different, if you were to build a Blackwater or a Triple Canopy, which came out of it, and some of these other prime contractors, if you were to try to build that today, it would take 15, 20 years just to be able to build it all in-house. Well, you can still have all those capabilities by having strategic partnerships and working with other, like, I'm not a cyber guy. I know enough about it to stay on top of it, and say, okay, well, we have a problem here. We need to figure out how to fix it, but I'm not the guy that can fix it, but I know the people that are. And so we have some cyber capabilities, but that's because we have partnerships in that space. And so really the whole model of the business is Team of Teams, and bringing in other very highly skilled individuals and teams to work under one umbrella to collectively make it stronger. So that's awesome. That's pretty much the idea, and the whole point is to strengthen the homeland. I mean, for number of decades, we've really put so much focus on things abroad, and whether it's the border or and a lot of it ultimately has to do with the politicians and DC. They're so far behind on legislatively on different things that it's impossible for law enforcement to stay caught up.
Yeah. All right. So your company's called Orange Diamond Consulting Group. All right, so tell us about that name a little bit, and how you came up with that and what it means, and then we'll jump into kind of some of the little more into the day-to-day of what you're doing, because I think it's very important work, and you're bringing an aspect to the situation and to the problem, like an answer to the problem that a lot of people don't even know that the problem exists. So
so back in a lot of people have seen Saving Private Ryan, or Band of Brothers, those movies. Well, back in World War II, the Ranger battalions put an orange diamond on the back of their helmets with a number in the middle of it, identifying which battalion they were a part of. And so back in 2011, 2012, I got a tattoo on my right bicep of the orange diamond with the 2 in the middle of it for second bat. And for whatever reason, I was surprised that the name wasn't taken already. Looking, but so I decided, well, I'm going to call it Orange Diamond as like a historical, a salute to the guys that, like, second bat. We're known, like, our what we're known for historic and military history is seizing Pointe du Hoc on D-Day. And so and that's really how everybody in Ranger history wise, if you're in Second Ranger Battalion and you don't know that, it's going to be a bad day for you. So
yeah.
So we kind of, I love history anyway, especially military history, and so just working. That's how it came out, and I was like, well, that's kind of cool. I'll roll with it. And then the consulting group name is, we're not really consultants. We do some strategic advising and national security advising type stuff, but that was solely for the purpose of remaining politically correct, just because it's you can get axed for different things with the government just because your name says something else on it. So I tried to remain away from those types of names. So
well, it gives you some latitude as well to, like, you can consult, you can do strategy, you can do all the things, you can do security, but if sometimes you pigeonhole yourself into a name.
Exactly.
It's kind of like getting typecast into something. You're like, no, you can't do that because you're a security group, not a consulting group. But it kind of gives you options. So that's definitely, I understand that. It's smart. So, okay, you talked about, kind of the broad spectrum of what you do, but give us like a rundown of your like the day-to-day, not necessarily like your day-to-day, but what the company's like day-to-day goals are, like who's the clients, who you're helping, who you're doing stuff with, all that good stuff.
So the big tasking, if you will, is coming up with innovative solutions for the government and the private sector to fill gaps. And what I mean by that is I do not want to have to try to compete for the same RFP that's out there. It just doesn't. It's a huge waste of time in a lot of ways, and it's very expensive to do things that way. And it's fine once you have huge teams of people that are doing that type of capture and stuff for you. But ultimately, early on, we want to fill those hard to fill gaps and go the IDIQ route and things like that. So we focus on the intelligence side of things, and filling intelligence support roles, and then advising directly to some executive level type spaces. And then outside of that, we're actually coming up with, and we've created a portion of the company now is focused on innovating and creating our own products, if you will. We're working on a counterintelligence tool right now. That's a heavy lift. So things like that. Also in the counter drone space, some different innovative solutions there. And that we'll get into more on that today, and why we're focused on that. But both of those are kind of two of our 4 core pieces that we work on.
Okay. Who are your clients mainly? Are your government, agencies? Are you talking about law enforcement? Are you talking about, just regular private companies? Like what's your
all of the above. So all of the above, and it's really kind of picky on how we do that. No different than when somebody reaches out to you, we kind of vet the client, so to speak, too, because not everybody's the right client, and and so that's kind of how we roll on that. But typically it's primarily the major primes and the government.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So filling in gaps. What like for people that don't kind of understand what that means in the the defense space, we have different definitions of what that is. But for just your everyday person in America, that's not necessarily what gaps need to be filled. What are those gaps?
So, I mean, one of the best ways to look at this, whether it's for law enforcement or it's for the military, because we aren't the government and we're a private company, I can do things that the government can't. Now, that doesn't mean I can go out and break the law, but when it comes to getting information on somebody or people, places, or things, then I can get that information whatever means necessary, without having to worry about constitutional authorities and things or warrants or things like that. Now I can't go and break and enter a home to get that information. I can't do that. But I can utilize other tools that are out there on the market without having to worry about the warrant in order to get them. And so that benefits the government. So we speed up the process for them in a lot of ways. So there's, whether it's with law enforcement or others, companies like ours can be essentially confidential informants for the government.
Right.
And that's the way it works.
So like open source intelligence, all the different tools that you can use, kind of like from a private investigator standpoint. I'm not saying that that's what, I'm not comparing it directly to that, but, from a stance where they would have a little more leeway to do some things, in the public than say, a cop would, or the military would for that matter. And the federal government would, just because of all the red tape that goes along with it. And then so, I mean, yeah, like, is it opposition research? Is that part of it too? Or is it like, what are,
yeah. I mean, so, and then we have, so Canada, Mexico, Latin America, and in the Middle East, we have, human networks. And so part of that left over from the Afghan withdrawal, other portions of that, our team has done a good job of essentially recruiting folks, and then others are strategic partners, and so that already had networks, and we went to them and say, hey, would you want to be a part of this? And so and that allows us to, like, let's say it's the cartels and sex trafficking, we can receive that human information, then utilize other tools and confirm or deny that, and then put together a report on it and provide it to the government. So, and then that way the government's getting a much more finished product from us versus essentially a human tip that's to them. Then they have to then their analysts have to spend hours and hours trying to do what we've already done for them, essentially. So we're more or less a full fusion product. We're taking multiple data points from what the human has provided or otherwise, and then confirming through those other sources and really fusing that. Whereas most companies out there, almost all of them actually are, they really just provide, they're like body shop labor, I call it. They're simply just farming out the labor for the government, and that's really about it. And it's cheaper for the government to do it that way, and that's why they do that. And we go that a couple extra layers, and that's really the big difference. And overall, I would say, like, there's OSINT. Is it classified as that? Yes, because we can't be we're not the classifier, right? And so the government is. So once it enters their doors, and they determine what they want to do with it. But I would put it in this category as beyond OSINT, but not quite classified.
Right.
That's what I would call it.
So I'm hearing a lot of what sounds like an irregular warfare approach to this strategy. Would you kind of agree with that? So let's talk a little bit about the irregular warfare aspect that you're kind of bringing to this. And when I say warfare, obviously people today kind of don't understand that we are at war every single day. We're not necessarily at war kinetically with all of our adversarial nations, but we are at war every day, whether it's through information operations, whether it's through electronic warfare, cyber warfare, all the different things. So kind of explain, how your group is working with irregular warfare to kind of solve some of these problems today.
Yeah. So when a few years ago, this is post-Afghan withdrawal, I had met Tom Homan and a few other executive leaders back before the change in administration, and I said, well, I had already had the idea of taking this somewhere, and I met Mike Banks, who's just retired as chief of Border Patrol, and I had already started putting together this like very loose framework. At the time, it was very loose, and spoke with them about a solution for Homeland Security in Texas and kind of ground zero being here. And I authored a Homeland Security strategy for the state. And it was very comprehensive. It was we have the capabilities to put 3,000 special operation veterans at the border within 45 days. And that's just leveraging the network, right? Like reaching back into some of those organizations, Special Operations Foundation, places like that, or Global Soft, and working with them to recruit, to fill those spots. But then it's easy. I mean, we come from communities that it's pretty easy to know where somebody's standing is, and be able to vet those individuals. And so that speeds up the process too. So it's not, it's far less of a lift than us just throwing it out on the internet and letting anybody apply, because we can keep that application like essentially a closed group, right? And so that's part of it. And then, but overall, we had these different categories, and one of the biggest ones was to, as part of, augmenting local, state, and federal law enforcement, and assisting them. It was really a train, assist, advise model. So it probably sounds pretty familiar to you, considering
very familiar.
What the Green Berets, like what y'all do in your skill set. So it was, in a lot of ways, taking that model. And again, it's about how can we speed up this and fill this gap. And a lot of people don't know this, but like the state of Texas right now is in pretty big trouble when it comes to the amount of law enforcement officers that we have available. And it's not getting any better. And the reason for that is we have this steep incline of people moving into the state. Well, I could hire law enforcement officers every day, but I still have to train them. So you got this lag time. And so you're constantly behind, and the state has no answer and no way to figure out how to pick it up. And so we were the answer to that, to fill that gap. And what I mean we're short, we're not short like 3,000 or 5,000 or even 10,000 police officers across the state. We're short about 29,000 police officers across the state. So you're talking the population of many small cities. We're short an entire small city's worth of police officers. And it's a big deal. I mean, we're
a very big deal.
Our ratio is about half of what it should be, according to FBI statistics, as far as law enforcement officers to per 1,000 citizens. It's a little less than half of what it should be. So that's
what's the recommendation that you've given to the state of how, one, I mean, obviously you have to train, you also have to get, candidates that are good candidates. Not everyone has the, moral fortitude and the ability to be a police officer, and nor do you want everybody to be, obviously. So, what's the recommendation there? And how do we even go about fixing this problem? And then as a model for other states that may be seeing some of these issues, especially when we're seeing these exoduses from some of these other, bigger states that are having some issues. Like what's the answer to that in your opinion?
Well, I mean, ultimately it comes down to funding, and that's part of it. Like, I mean, nobody wants to be a police officer when they get treated poorly, and you're never like, it's a thankless job, and it's not about getting the pat on the back. And I know that that most people know that, but it's when you're doing something and it's not appreciated, and it's not appreciated, makes it hard to do that job or even want to show up. And so that's where I think that from a funding standpoint, and especially if you're not getting paid in any reasonable amount of money, and some cities can afford it. Like if you were to look at north side of DFW, it's really high pay. Well, they just suck. Once guys get in law enforcement for a couple years here in Texas, say they get a couple years worth of experience under their belt, they'll jump from Fort Worth or from Dallas to one of the suburbs and make twice as much money. Well, and then those towns aren't forking over the cash to pay them. And so like the model has to change in order for it. And the model really, really has to change. We have to throw more money at it. We have to make the lifestyle more advantageous to want to be in it. It has like some of the highest divorce rates out there. And so, it'd be hard to be like, if I had a child and they were of age to look at going into law enforcement, it'd be really hard for me to be like, yeah, go for it, son. This is going to be great for you and your family. Is it? Like, is it? Rough. You know what I mean? So like, if your people are being honest with themselves, is it really worth it? And, I'd have to say in the environment today, it'd be really difficult to say, yeah, go for it. I appreciate those that do it and make those sacrifices, but it's certainly not the way. And we have a big issue, and a lot of it just has to do with how leadership in law enforcement is so stuck in the past. It's unbelievable. And this really, it's kind of gets me on my soapbox, and I hate, and I'll get off of it as quickly as possible.
We need to hear it. Let's go.
Law enforcement at large, not everybody. There's some very good leadership. There is, and I'm very grateful for the ones that I know and talk to on a regular basis. But a lot of the I call it the old guard in law enforcement, has got to go. They are a problem, a big problem. They are so stuck in the past. They don't want to pick up technology and run with it and leverage, what I call how to do more with less. They don't want to fix some of the issues that are causing some of the recruitment problems. And a lot of it's just that old school mentality. Well, they got to do it this way because I did it this way 25 years ago or whatever. And that's poor leadership. And so it's just really poor leadership. And then they hire their buddies to conduct the training classes that, well, your buddies are retired. Like, they're not in it every day. So how is what they're teaching even relevant? It's not. Right. They learned it 20 years ago from another buddy of yours that's more than likely no longer with us, unfortunately, but it's just the truth. And so like, we're not advancing in law enforcement, and they don't allow for collective, like one of the beauties of Team of Teams and of the special operations community is this ability to have bottom up leadership. And that doesn't exist in law enforcement. If you're low man on the totem pole or anywhere, they don't want to hear from you. And it's just shut up and do what you're told. And that's a big issue. And again, that falls under that leadership category where they should be encouraging those types of thoughts and ideas. And hey, if it's a good idea, we're going to try it. And and see what comes of it, or we'll offer it. And put it through a pilot period of time, or like beard, for instance. When I left the department I was at, we finally had convinced the chief. We did No Shave November. Well, the response from the community was so positive, it became a policy. And but that was an old school, a very old school thought that you had to, in order to look professional at all, you had to be clean shaven. That's not true.
Right. You can, you can keep a well-kept beard and look professional. That's perfect.
Right.
Like, and the rest of the world does this as well, which is, it's kind of like the Army being, like the Army was on the old, you can't get a seal on your gas mask if you have a beard. Well, if you have a massive, beard that's grown out for 3 years, probably not. But if you keep a well-kempt beard, the masks, they seal, right. Like it's just, but they've kept that mentality, and they won't move past it. Whereas you look at some of the European armies, that they allow you to do it as long as it's, well maintained. And that, and again, you kind of leave that up to the commander. Some commanders will give a little more leeway than others, but at the same time, it's just like, we're making a huge deal out of all this. Most of the kids that join the Army can't even grow beards in the first place. So, like when they're younger,
maybe when they turn 23, 24, they might be able to push it a little bit more, but most of them aren't going to be able to. Yeah. And, it's something came up the other day somewhere else that I was at, and the thought was, when we were kids, some of those old sayings, from our parents' generation and stuff, that are really they're more or less lies. They're lies, but they were like little white lies to keep you safe and to put this fear in you so you wouldn't do something. Well, that's true in law enforcement leadership. It's massive, like that type of thing. So, and I brought that up simply because of the gas mask. Yes, you're absolutely right. It will seal. And so, but that's a perfect example of where things have been blown out of proportion on a certain thing, just so somebody's mindset and their personal opinion was so strong that you shouldn't have a beard, that they came up and somebody said that for the first time, and it spread like wildfire. Well, that's kind of how leadership is in law enforcement. Oh, you can't do. We've never done this. You can't do. That's not right.
Yeah,
like that's their mindset, and so they get stuck in this. Like it's not even a work through it in a positive. Like let's figure out how to make something work along these lines or anything like that. It's just a flat no most of the time, versus really working hard to come up with, and it's slowly starting to change. But again, it's as that kind of old guard trickles out, that things are happening. But yeah, the old school mindset, we got to be able to teach those old dogs new tricks, and it just, currently it's just not happening. And that's why we've been fighting the war on drugs for 40 years. And guess what? Haven't made a lot of changes since Pablo Escobar was killed. The war on drugs has largely remained the exact same, and law enforcement's TTPs and everything else has remained the exact same. Now, I will say the DEA does an exceptional job, and they're probably the best at intelligence collection in the federal government. They're exceptional. But outside of that, at large, a lot of things just haven't changed. And when it comes to irregular warfare and things trickling down to the local and state level, well, that's where it's at. And I say that because we're short people, but there's no training being conducted on irregular warfare at the local and state level. Well, why? Well, I think a lot of it again falls back on leadership's eyes and their mindset of, and you see this especially at the political level, but you really see it at governors, lieutenant governor level. You see it there, and then you see it at executive level law enforcement, but then you really see it in Congress too. So they will push and kick the can down the road on any issue because they don't want to address or even acknowledge that it exists. Because the moment that they acknowledge that it exists, then they have to put that over here in the problem category. Well, if it's in the problem category, then they have to address it. And then once they have to address it, they better have a solution because that's their job. Right. And so they just don't acknowledge it. And so it just keeps getting kicked. And so, and that's where I think that some of the law enforcement leaders that I've spoken with, and I want to be clear, I'm not trying to bash on all leadership. It's not that at all. I just want to bring up and raise the alarm bell that, hey guys, like, it's okay to try something new and learn and move forward with that and be comfortable in that. And because if from a leadership perspective, I get it. It might be a little bit risky, whatever, but I promise you that if you're willing to try it, your officers are going to have a lot more respect for you than just constant no's and that type of thing. And so, unless something's been mandated, like, you just haven't seen a lot of change. And that's where, like, body cams have been very good for law enforcement overall. That was a great move, kind of nationwide on that. It gives a lot of things. It's also, the ones that originally pushed it, one of the best positives about it, it's not a negative for law enforcement at all. It's kind of if you're a good officer, it's a CYA, but it also provides you evidence. Like, that person's going to do something that can now be shown in court that's on video. Otherwise it was
it's very important. It's kind of like the whole, surveillance in public thing that everyone makes a really big deal out about. Like, I don't want surveillance in my home, right, in my private spaces, because that's obviously you want to be able to have privacy. But when you go out in public, there's like, you have to have give a level of, I'm going to be in public, right? And we don't all get to have just privacy right in public, especially in like population centers. And, people get mad about the cameras in there. And I'm like, why? Were you planning on doing something that those cameras would catch you doing that you shouldn't have done? Because if you're just walking by it, you're just going to the store, you're just going to do whatever you're going to do. It's kind of the same thing with the body cams for cops. You're a good cop and you're doing what you're supposed to do all the time. There's literally nothing for you to worry about, because now that's, like you said, you have a cover your ass thing. Like, this camera is going to record what happened, so that when, it's not just you saying that dude went for his gun and I feared for my life, so I pulled mine and engaged him. You have clear video evidence of that. And I think that's a great thing. And I mean, again, it puts all the good officers, it gives them a backup, and then all the ones that are less than good, necessarily, it gives them hey, like, you either got to alter, or you got to do something else with your life, because you're just not going to be able to do. I mean, and if you look back, I mean, obviously and I'm not trying to say this is just police. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Street Kings with Keanu Reeves. It was a David Ayer show. And that the captain at the end of that, when he gets caught, he says a thing. He says, he's like, if firefighters or teachers, or whoever, which teachers actually kind of can get away with it, could do the same thing that the cops were doing, they would do it too. And from a standpoint of there's evil people everywhere type of mentality, that's true, right? Like, obviously the majority of police are good, honorable people, and they join something that they're not making a lot of money. They joined to do something to serve their community, to help, and to make their communities better. But there are going to be some dishonorable people involved in that, and so sunlight is the best disinfectant for that kind of stuff. And so I think it's a great thing. I want to talk on. So you talked about doing more, like trying to get these law enforcement agencies, especially in Texas, how to do more with less. I mean, you have a massive discrepancy on how many police officers you need versus how many you have right now. So what are some of the tools that exist today that would help them do more with less, and kind of just explain that so that our viewers can kind of see, oh yeah, there is an alternative to just having boots on the ground, walking around all day.
Right. So, and part of that is simply leveraging technology. So there's so much available, especially in the AI age. But one of my, and he's just a good example. But Christian Johnson with Metis Analytics, he is a wonderful guy. Came out of the Army intelligence community, lives in St. Louis, and was a police officer as well. So him and I have had a lot of connectivity, like as far as our past and how we work today. He is a genius when it comes to AI and leveraging that in today's environment and what we work on. He's awesome at it. I mean, he's just naturally very, very gifted. And that dude he's going places with what he does. I mean, he's got some stuff out now that law enforcement can utilize today. And and some of they don't even have to pay for it. It's open source. And so it's really an incredible incredible stuff that he's doing. And he's one example of, hey, you could bring in somebody like this to set you up or to do these agents or whatever. And what I mean by that is, the way things work today is you could have AI essentially assist you could save a ton of time for law enforcement officers by having AI write your police report, by sucking in all the information, the videos, the logs and the notes that the officer puts in on his computer in the case file and that type of stuff. AI could write the report for them. They can review it and then sign off on it at the bottom and say that it's their work because they've read it and they've approved it. That's one example of the amount of time that they could save simply by doing that and being able to change that. But the biggest thing, and you are seeing this to a certain degree, and again, I don't want this to sound like I'm bashing law enforcement. Not everybody's bad. It's just we've gotten ourselves into the position that we're in today because it's been a series of bad leadership for a number of years that's led to this point. Fort Worth Police Chief Eddie Garcia, wonderful. He's done great things already in the short time he's been at Fort Worth. Chief Cuomo in Dallas has also done great things, and they're gearing up for FIFA here, and they're having to figure out, how are we going to make this work? And they've thrown a lot of money at through FEMA grants for counter drone stuff, and they've done a good job, and they're doing the best they can with what they've got to work with, and I think that that's a hard job for one, but it's definitely difficult in some of these places, in some of these bigger cities where you face different challenges. But even for them and for other law enforcement is leveraging and building this. We cannot fill the gaps collectively as a nation. And this is kind of across the board. If we don't leverage public-private partnerships and utilize those for the betterment of our communities, it's not going to happen. We have to do that, not just on the federal level, because we can't, kind of like in Biden's administration, where things really kind of fell apart from the Homeland Security and safety perspective around the nation, unless you were, in certain states. But in large part, it didn't matter what state you were in. Like we saw plenty of people that were murdered in Republican states, because you can travel from state to state without, when I go into Oklahoma, I'm not giving them my passport. So it's like the risk still exists through that interstate travel and things like that. But the really the big issue there is in how things fell apart is just understanding the risk to the communities, but fixing that is really where we've got to go through public-private partnerships, and that's how we're going to be able to pull the people and that manpower in, where I can augment and pay this company versus having to do this on our own or in-house. I can also do it much faster because bureaucracy gets in the way of doing anything effective, quickly with the government, whereas we can move at the speed of lightning in the private sector.
Right.
And that's just the way it works. And so if they'll leverage that, I mean, things will change for them. And I do believe that, certain things have got to become easier from a standpoint of, sometimes law enforcement, like the RFPs and other things, aren't even going to get out because they don't know what they don't know. Does that make sense? Like
right.
Like they don't understand that they have this critical gap needing filled, but they don't realize that the gap's actually there. And so that's part of it. Is just, I'm just big on bottom up leadership. Like, you got to talk to your people because they're going to tell you where the gaps are. And if they're not spending time, if chiefs and assistant chiefs aren't spending time, and at least at a bare minimum every single week, they should, one day of their work week should spend doing nothing but ride-alongs with their team, with their people, like just hopping in a car. Doesn't matter if they hop from car to car or whatever, but they should be in a different, or they should spend one day a week in the street with their people.
Yep.
And it's that type of a job. And it's important that, that you're known and seen, and it's just as important that you're known and seen in the community, and you're not just hiding behind a badge in an office in town hall or whatever, or at the police station. Right. So like that, it matters, and some do a really good job at it and others don't. So, but yeah, it's that type of thing. And, a big on the public-private partnerships, at least to get things started. And that's how I wrote the Texas Homeland Security Plan. Actually, was we would get it started for the state as a contract, and then we would roll it off. Like, part of it is morally it's the right thing to do. And then two, I know that we can stand it up faster, set the culture until we can promote from within. We can do all of that type of stuff far easier than the state can. And because currently, like with what the state has proposed and what they're working on now, who's going to train them?
Right.
They don't know. They don't have anybody that's knowledgeable or experienced enough to actually conduct the training, and it's going to move too slow. Well, had they done what we were proposing, we would have been 100% staffed going into FIFA right now, versus the opposite, where they're just not that well prepared for it. And unfortunately, like, due to, we can kind of segue this into FIFA and Homeland Security stuff too, but due to the federal issues with funding this year, I'm concerned for FIFA's security. So it is a mess what they've found. Like, and a lot of it just has to do with delays that they've had, and like meetings getting canceled because DHS isn't funded because of that type of stuff. So certain departments were completely told not to work during the shutdown. And it happened, like they were out for a while for certain portions of DHS. And so, and that matters when it comes to the whole, collectively as a whole. But it also mattered for the funding flow for the various grants that DHS was providing local and state level leadership for security type stuff and other things regarding the World Cup. And so, so I am concerned about it. Hopefully all goes well with it, but but it's a mess.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got this. I don't understand how their rationale behind some of it either, but like a big issue with me is, Canada. So a big red flag. I mean, I love some of the Canadian friends that I have. They're great people, but man, they've got some serious issues in that government. And I don't know,
Yeah.
and I'm solely talking about their connection and close ties to the Chinese Communist Party and
Yes.
Xi Jinping. So like they're allowing Chinese nationals. So like the moment that it was signed, I was like, yep, they're doing that for us. They don't care about getting people into Canada, except with the exception of it's their stepping stone into the United States. And
right.
They're allowing people to travel to Canada for the World Cup without visas. Like, no, you can just go. Doesn't matter. Just go. So how are you going to track all these people?
Yeah.
Like,
it's insane.
That's probably our biggest issue in the Fed, like from a DHS perspective and an ICE perspective. We don't have the amount of agents needed to properly, and this is again where we can leverage computing power, is nobody's really tracking foreign nationals that overstay their visas. And what I mean by that is like in utilizing compute power to do it. Well, they're not U.S. citizens, so we can create those parameters however we want them to look like.
Yep.
Tie their credit cards or whatever forms of payment that they have with them to tie it to their visa. So that way every purchase that they make in the United States is tracked and logged. Guess what? That means we're going to know where they're at, more than likely, over a period of time. So in 90 days, whenever they're wherever, we can know exactly, oh, well, we've got a pretty good idea of where these people are at, or at least, that type of thing. And so otherwise, how are you going to ever, you're just not going to, okay, I put somebody's name down on a form saying I'm staying with them. Sorry, folks, that's not good enough. And
that's important too. And a lot of people won't look at this from the irregular warfare perspective, but so you do that. You track, you track their name, and then you track their finances while they're here, because they're not Americans. They shouldn't have the same privileges that we have. They should be.
That's it's already exists. So, they don't have the same freedoms that we do.
But doing that, just that little thing that doesn't cost a lot of money, especially today with the technology we have, it wouldn't cost very much to monitor those few little things. But it makes them change their TTPs, especially if they're nefarious actors. And it makes them do things that cause them to it takes more money, it takes more time, it takes more training, so that disrupts the entire ecosystem that's behind them if they are nefarious actors. If they're not nefarious actors and they're just here, living the good life in America, then you'll see that in their finances, and you'll see that everything's fine. But it just gives you another avenue to track who could potentially be nefarious actors. So it's very important what you just said.
Yeah,
I want to
go ahead.
I want to ask you a question before I want to move on to the convergence and some of the slides you sent, and talk about some of that stuff from a strategic standpoint and how important that is. But how much, before we do that, for the law enforcement aspect especially, how much red cell training are they doing, if any?
Zero.
Do you know?
Most.
And see, that's
most aren't doing any at all. Yeah. Most. So that's not necessarily all, but most.
Right. Let's talk about red cell training. Kind of explain to people what red cell training is, what it means, and why it's important. I mean, SOF does it all the time. We did it all the time. I'm assuming the other whether it's SEALs, Rangers, especially your tier 1 operation units are definitely doing it. Just kind of give a once over the world of what that is, and then why it would be very important to do. And it just blows my mind. I always hear this when I talk to people about law enforcement, that they never do red cell training.
I think a lot of it has more to do with time than it does anything, to be honest with you. And that is a difficult ask, for a very difficult ask for law enforcement leadership. And it's how do you properly allocate the time? Because I've got this mandatory training over here, and whatever it may be. Well, it should be part of the mandatory training is what it should be.
Right.
In order to maintain your accreditations and things of that nature, in my opinion. I think they just don't like, and there's a lot of segue, right? There's a lot of veterans that are law enforcement.
Right.
But I think a lot of it just simply has to do with the know-how and the people that do know how to do it, maybe speaking up if they're in those departments and saying, "Hey, we should do this. I know how to do this," or whatever. But ultimately, it just comes down to, I think it just has never been a priority, and it should be. And because how do you know how to get better if you don't know where you're at, right? And
exactly.
And so, and I'm glad you asked me that question, because I'm going to do some more thinking on that as to how or why that's not being done.
For our viewers, so red cell training is just training with an opposition force,
right?
In whatever aspect that may be. It could be, you could be doing it DA, direct action, right? You could do counter surveillance, like all the different things. Just go through any form of whatever law enforcement you're talking about, or military aspect, whatever training needs to happen, whether that's sniper, can do that.
One time they do it as active shooter. They do it in that. That's outside of that. You don't see other actors during training typically.
Right. But so like red cell training for, like, let's say FIFA, for example, like you have this massive security problem. You have a really big, what you would want to do is you could do it in small sections. You don't have to have every law enforcement agent that's going to be part of this process all at once, right? You could do it in scales and in the areas that they're going to be, their sectors of fire, if you want to call it that. And then you could, like you said, active shooter drills. So like someone comes in, pulls a gun, like, how do you do this? How do you respond to it? What's the communication look like? If just anything. So like for surveillance, you would have people that are, you're surveilling them. And then you would have, from the flip side, to do like surveillance detection to make sure that you aren't being surveilled, right? So that's all it's using an opposition force, which is just mocked, but to give you real world training on how you would react in these situations. And, for SF, it's a very big thing. We do it all the time. A lot of our courses have it built into the courses that we're doing. Even our culmination exercise, which is called Robin Sage, is essentially, it's a big exercise, but it's essentially just red cell training, just in a massive footprint to get every Green Beret that's going through that class that year, to be to that point where they need to be. So it blows my mind. And I get it. Like, I get that it is a lift, right? And it would require some time allocation. And then, when you're in a department that has too few people and too much areas to cover, then how do you allocate that? And, these are problems and these are gaps, and they either get filled and solved, or we have tragedies happen because of them. And then from that, then we'll be like, oh, we need to fill and solve these. Like, well, yeah, we knew we needed to fill these gaps. We knew we needed to solve these problems ahead of time. We just put them off because it was inconvenient. It was too costly, whatever the excuse may be. And I think that's a big problem. That's a huge problem.
Right. Well, and that's where I look at it, and from a leadership perspective, it can't be okay that things are put off, or like, as a leader, you don't get excuses. Either you're performing, or your people in your organization are performing, or they're not. And it's your job to make sure that they are. And so when things aren't happening, like, and they need to get to be done, it's your job as the leader to figure it out, or to task the people under your leadership to figure it out and for you on your behalf. Right. And so if they, it is a big deal. And it just goes back to, because of just the gap in personnel that's out there currently, without public-private partnerships, we quite literally cannot fix the issues that are at large. And this has nothing to do with promoting me or Orange Diamond. I would be, happy to see more of this happening across the board, across the country. And with any organization similar to mine that do this type of training, and there's a lot of them out there that do that and that work with law enforcement on a regular basis that can provide some of these answers. And you don't, I guarantee you, because a lot of people they'll Google and they'll go to somebody's website and they'll be like, should we reach out to them? Should we not? If it's not listed on their website, a lot of them won't even ask, right? Like they're just not even going to ask to see if it's an option of something that they offer. Well, it'd be worth having a conversation with any of those. If you're a law enforcement officer in an administrative role looking to fill gaps and answers, if you go to somebody's website and it's not listed, pick up the phone and call them, and have a conversation with them, because just because it's not listed doesn't mean they're not going to be willing to work with you and make something happen.
Right.
Pretty sure that they would still like the business, even though it's not listed on their website. So, and I think just people so I call it this Amazon effect, but like people are so used to being able just to go click a few buttons and they get what they want. And that kind of trickles throughout the rest of society, even when it gets into security and defense stuff where, I can go here, I can order everything I want, and in a few days I'll have it. And that's just not that type of mindset doesn't work in this space at all. Like you have to be willing to do a little bit more legwork to get those services than that.
Yep. No, I mean, it's important. And you could even do it, the private sector, helping out with this is huge, because it is a huge lift for like a department, especially a smaller department that doesn't have access to all of the, everything that would be required for that. But you could, you could still you could do it while officers are on their, like if they're on patrol. Not necessarily, they wouldn't be on patrol 100%, but they would be reactive patrol. So like move like, okay, we're going to do it in this area. So we'll have some officers in these other areas, but we have a real world, code word that ends this exercise the moment they're needed for something, that can't be responded to. Like if you had to pull 5 officers to do this training, right? Hey, we have a real world, oh shit, we got to stop this training now, and we got to go take care of something that's actually real world. So you can do it while, they would actually normally be working, and you could fit that into the schedule. I mean, like it's just one of those things. It's like you said, it would change some things, right? And it would require, a little more planning, a little more just effort. And a lot of people just don't want to do that. And so they'll act like the problem doesn't exist instead of actually addressing it and being like, okay, this is a problem and let's just solve it in the best way possible and in the most cost-effective way possible. And I guarantee, like, there's so many veterans, there's so many, especially soft veterans out there that are having trouble finding purpose. And like how do you've found purpose, and you've correlated, being from Ranger Bat into the real world. But there's so many guys that, they're shooters. They did a lot of trigger time. They did a lot of kinetic, operations in their deployments. And then they come back to the States, they get out of the military, and then like, what do we do? Right. Shooting people is not a profession that is really, something that correlates to doing anything in country, right? Or, like your everyday civilian life. It's really hard to like replicate that. And then so how do they get purpose and use their skill sets? Well, this would be a perfect way, because you set up dynamic red cell training, and this company offers all of the OPT4, right? So that like you just pay a fee that's would have to, obviously you have to compensate the people that are doing it. It has to be a business model that makes sense. But I think it would free up the, hey, you don't have to do this lift by yourself, budget this in. It's a very important training, and let's get it done. And, I think that would be a great thing, and something that's entirely necessary. And like I said, like with you and like some of the guys, like the networks that we have, we could make it work, and we could, we could do it and we could see real results out of that. I mean, like, I just look at the stuff that's happened, like what happened in New Orleans on New Year's a few years ago that everyone forgets about, right?
Preventable.
That guy right. Yeah, that was 100% preventable. And they reacted But if you watch the police videos, like you could scrutinize the reaction a lot, because again, when you haven't trained for a situation like this, you haven't, and you get that adrenaline dump. You've only used your service weapon, a few times at the range in no stress environments. When you get that adrenaline jump in a high stress environment where this is happening, like the decision making process kind of goes away, and then it's a reactionary process. And if you haven't trained that muscle memory to do these certain things, it's not going to go that great. And we've seen that numerous times, and not just that one, but I'm not saying, I'm not trying to bash the New Orleans police or anything, but when you see something like that happen, the idea is not like, hey, let's take scalps and have scapegoats and blame everybody for this. It's, hey, that was not handled the way it necessarily should have been. We could have prevented a lot of these deaths. Let's work through this problem and figure out how to make sure this never happens again, and make sure our dudes are trained to respond to something like this. That should be the reaction. And sadly, it's not most of the time.
Right. Well, and I think this goes back into I think a lot of things are vastly over. They're made to be way more complicated than they should be, right? Like training, for instance, being one of those. You and I, in our conversation yesterday, kind of talked about this, but like, what makes Delta, or what makes SEAL Team 6, any of the tier 1 units, what makes them that? It's because they've absolutely mastered the basics. That's it. So that just, all that means is if you master those basics, means when things get complicated on the battle space, they're so proficient at the basics that when they do have to do something that's a bit more complex, it's not a problem. That's all that means. And so like, they don't, when you do it that much and train those basics that much, and where this segues into law enforcement, federal, state, local, doesn't matter. But if you're at home watching TV and you don't have anything else going on, throw your holster on and start pulling, drawing your weapon. Mm-hmm. Make sure your weapon's clear before you do it. But like,
dry fire drills.
Heard of that happening before, not from one of my people, but I heard of it. I was teaching a shooting course. This is years ago, probably 10 years ago. I was teaching a course, and the guy was like, that came to the course was like, yeah, we were doing that at my house and shot a hole through the wall. And I was like, that's just not something you don't admit to that when you're at a shooting course.
Yeah, definitely. That's called an ND. And that's not a good thing. You get
fired for that in Ranger Regiment, like you.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they kick you out if that happens.
Well, you should get fired for that in SF as well.
It's dangerous.
But I've heard of people that it happened to and they did not get fired. It's sad. It's one of those things. Like, I've never had an ND, and it's because I check my weapon and I use it the way that you're supposed to. You go through those things every single time, the same way every single time. Before you're going to do anything, you're going to make sure that it's unloaded, or make sure that there's not a round chain. It's just the basics that you drill yourself into, and you're not going to have those issues. And that's like, I'm a Second Amendment guy for sure, 100%. But I also you've probably seen it when you do a conceal and carry. I don't know. Does Texas a constitutional carry state or no?
Yeah, now it is. Yeah,
now it is. So like North Carolina, you have to get a CCW. You have to go through a little course to get your permit to be able to conceal carry. It's an open carry state, but if you're open carrying, that's kind of silly in my opinion anyway.
Right.
But there was people there that had never touched a firearm before. And so shooting this, like they're about to get their conceal and carry permit, and this is the first time they're shooting. And I'm like, this is a problem, guys. Like, I'm not trying to be an asshole to you. Like, I'm not trying to say that you don't have a right to do this, but you just scared me in a 3, 5, 7 meter range, and like with no stress, with nothing going on at all, like in the most relaxed environment possible. And you missed a bunch. And like this is just, there needs to be a lot more training involved before I feel comfortable with all of you people carrying around me, because it's kind of scary. Like one guy was like, yeah, here, and like just pointed it right at me, and I was like, bro, like, come on, it's not loaded. I'm like, I don't care. If I get my gun out and point it at you, whether it's loaded or not, you don't know that, right? Like that's
Right.
like this is a serious thing that we're doing here, and like these weapons deserve respect, and that's kind of that's one of the main things for me is like you have to respect these weapon systems, no matter what you're using, no matter like how Second Amendment ho you are. Like you have to be you have to be responsible.
I'm
First.
all for Second Amendment, like all for it as well. But I can tell you, we've got some gaps that need to be filled there too. Like it's a big problem. I'm all for it, but just like being able to have a driver's license, as long as you haven't broken certain laws, is a right, and you can have it, doesn't mean that you should have it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and so, and just because you can buy a firearm and own a firearm, doesn't mean you really need to be the one carrying it around with you or having it in your purse or whatever. If you haven't shot before and you're going to get a concealed carry permit, that's a problem. And it just because like that course is not designed to do any type of stress test on you. And because I can assure you, and in law enforcement too, like they don't do stress shoots enough. They just don't. And you see it in all these videos that, tying it back to that. If they're not stress testing themselves and getting their heart rate elevated and then reacting to this stuff and training that, when it does happen, they're not going to be prepared for what their body's just naturally going to do, and they're not going to know how to control it. And so, and not only that, like there's a reason for the training, but outside of just kind of subconsciously knowing exactly what your next steps are to do. But when it comes to the simple things of drawing your weapon and being safe in how you do that every time, and the muscle memory is so critically important, because when that heart rate gets elevated and you get that adrenaline dump, it's going to be much more difficult than people think. And they just, if you haven't done it,
that's what
go try it.
That's what I tell people. Like, So I tell, and like my wife will be like, because she doesn't shoot a lot. I've taken her here and there, and she should, and she doesn't carry either on purpose. I'm like, you don't need to carry because you're not good enough with it yet anyway. And like, if you were carrying, say you were carrying, and then I was the bad guy trying to come get you and you pulled a gun on me, like I'm probably going to close the distance and take it from you. And then now you've just lost the only thing that happened, and because you're not experienced with it. Right. And I tell her that I'm like, I'm not tooting my own horn here. I'm by no means the best shooter that's ever existed. I like there's guys that compete. There's guys, obviously, like you said, Delta and some of these tier 1 units that are far better. But then the majority of the civilian populace out there with a pistol, guarantee you I'm better than almost every single one of them, right? Save for maybe a few guys that do mass shooting or something like that.
Right.
But those are not the guys that are going to be like robbing the liquor store where I'm like, oh crap, I need to use my firearm now, in this high stress environment. Those are people that, that's usually generally going to be the people that are not training with these firearms. They're doing something nefarious with them, and that's the only purpose they have for it, because they use it as kind of like a fear scare tactic. So they're not necessarily ready to actually do anything with it even. And so, I tell the wife, I'm like, yeah, those people don't scare me. Like, there is always that luck factor. It's the same thing as like when you're in Afghanistan, right? Like, when they spray and pray, there is a chance that a stray bullet just could hit you, right? And that, and that's just God bringing you home, man. And that sucks. And that's just, that's life. But, their chances of accurately engaging you are pretty slim. And so it's kind of the same concept here. So,
well, and like, I think people misunderstand, like, what is a good shooter, right? Like, what is a good proficient shooter? I think that there's not a lot of knowledge of what that means. And what I try to tell people in every course that I taught previously and stuff was like, you don't have to be able to drive your rounds through something of the size of this poker chip. This is a golf ball marker. But like, you don't have to be able to drive all your rounds through something this small. That's not what we're asking you to do. What I need you to do is be able to put something in about an 8-inch diameter circle. That's where you need to be able to drive them into that 8 inches, the size of somebody's head or into the center of their chest. That's what you need to be able to do. And if you can do that proficiently, you're good. But if you're showing up and you're going to concealed carry class or and you're trying to test for it and you've got rounds flying all over the place past the paper. If you're missing the paper, you got big issues. And
at 3 to 5 meters.
Right. Dude, and that's the push on that, because the data shows that most engagements don't happen, they happen within 20 feet. And so like, what does that look like? And that, again, you don't have to be able to hit this, but hitting that 8 to 10 inch area, because a lot of civilians, I think, miss this, and law enforcement officers do too. They're going to have to be accountable for every single round that leaves that firearm when that event's over. And so it doesn't matter. Does not matter if you took out the bad guy or not. Even if you did, and he doesn't make it, but you hit an innocent civilian, and you hit little Susie walking behind or on the playground down the street with that round, and guess what? They have every reason to charge you with it because you didn't hit your intended target. And so, like, if that's a fear, and it should be, if that's something you are worried about because of your proficiency level, don't carry in public. Keep it at your house for your home protection. That's the right answer.
And it's a great point, because that's why you'll see law enforcement sometimes, the good ones, right? The ones that know what they're doing and they're thinking while they're doing it, that they'll pivot around to another angle to take their shots so that and they'll do it at a down, somewhere they'll try to get an elevated position or something so that it's going straight down and hitting behind them. You're not sending around flying off, to who knows where to hit who knows what. And that's a big thing too, and that's why, like, I use different for all my home defense weapons. I use different ammo in them than I don't use any FMJs at my house because I don't want bullets flying through walls here, because a bullet's going to go through sheetrock pretty easily, and then could you punch through a siding and into somebody else's house, and now you have just ruined somebody else's life because you weren't thinking right. And that's so all those things kind of go into this firearm process that I think is very important. And
that has happened, and like it doesn't make mainstream media, but that type of stuff has happened where people have been killed. Other family members have been killed while their other family member was trying to defend their home. And it's unfortunate, but it does matter. And like I tell people, a pistol is not the best option for home defense anyway. And so
shoddy all day long, dude.
That's right.
And it's better too, like for the wife, right? I tell her, like, this none of this is going to go through the wall, and it's only going to be lethal to a certain distance, right? But you also don't really have to aim. If someone's coming down this hallway at you, you don't need to make sure you have a perfect shot, because this isn't going through the wall. It's not going to strike anyone else, and it's going to give you the best spread to hit the attacker that's coming at you. And then, for home defense, like, that's kind of a no-brainer in my opinion. I'm just
I have a cousin of mine that stopped a home invasion. He went to his door with a shotgun and racked it. It stopped that sound of racking the firearm stopped them from trying to pry the door open.
That's a terrifying sound to somebody trying to break into a house, it is what it is. And that's just, but again, that is the safest, because you don't have to worry about, don't use a bear slug, right? Like, don't use a slug that could pass through your wall on your shotgun. But if you use a decent shot, like you're gonna be fine, and then you're not worried about going through the walls and hitting one of your babies or one of your, or one of your neighbors, for God's sake. So yeah, that's we kind of went off on a little tangent on the law enforcement shooting stuff, but here we go. I do want to talk. All right, let me pull up this right quick. All right, so we got this convergence, the unified threat ecosystem. So let's kind of break this down for everybody, and kind of how you're using this approach. Let me turn off this banner
yeah. So really, we're at this time period right now in history where it's the first time we've really seen traditional terrorist organizations, transnational crime, so cartels, narco-terrorism, and foreign state actors all working collectively and together in a very unified way that hasn't been seen until recently. And what really put this over the edge was, and the one thing I didn't agree with the Trump administration on, I agree that they should label something what they are: narco-terrorism, terrorists. They are that. But I don't know that I would have, or at least I wouldn't have done it. I would have done it, but I wouldn't have done it in the manner in which they went and did it. So I would have built my targeting packages and done some different things before I publicly labeled the cartels as FTOs. And the reason I say that is, they had every reason, the cartels in Mexico had every reason not to work with foreign terrorist organizations previously. And they always have, to a certain extent, as in terms of certain things, but they also had they had some red lines that they wouldn't cross. And because why would a cartel that is making tons of money off of the border and the drugs and the people, their commodities, whatever they're moving through the border, so people, things, money, doesn't matter, any of it, whatever their commodity of the day is, why would they want to shut that faucet off?
Right.
They really wouldn't, right? Like that's not that from simply a business perspective. Why would you shut down where your revenue comes from? You're not going to. You're just not going to do it. And so, from that perspective, like the thought process that the cartels are doing a ton of stuff with terrorist organizations and this and that, no, they weren't. But now they have no reason not to. And the reason for that is because now the authorities, because of being labeled FTOs, now the authorities are the same. The punishments are the same. Yeah, all those things put them in the same category as the traditional terrorist organizations. And I think that could have been handled a little bit differently. It's not that they very much are terrorists, narco-terrorists, right, to push their agenda. They kill people through and conduct terrorism on a daily basis in Mexico, right, in order to push and change the political agenda there. And so for their benefit, and that is by definition terrorism. So like I think I would have handled it a little bit. And that's, part of my beef with like Mexico benefits a lot from the United States already, just from an economic standpoint, like whether it's jobs and it's even improving. Like they're more and more are moving to Mexico over being manufacturing facilities or whatever. I don't get why it's so difficult to get some decent people in office in Mexico that are willing to play ball with us and do what's right versus constantly covering. It's not that they're not. Yes, are they doing more and are they actively engaged in counter-cartel efforts? Yes. But I also look at it as a lot of it's very much set up in a sense. It's like, it's this this amount of loss, like big business knows that they're going to have X amount of dollars in goods stolen or lost every year, just part of the bottom line. The cartels are doing the same thing. Like they've done this long enough now to where they've got a fully functioning business model of how it needs to operate and how much loss in product they're going to have, how much they can make off of human trafficking and sex trafficking at the border. And they've got all of this figured out, but they don't need terrorists at the border or like getting terrorists into the country or moving weapons into the like the weapons are mostly moving out of the United States, not into the United States. There's no issue getting weapons in the United States. Like they're here. All right. And criminals know criminals. And if I want to get my hands on a firearm or on whatever, it's not that difficult. And so that's not and I understand that there's certain things that they might want to, more sensitive type things that terrorists would want to have moved through the border. But either way, it's not nearly as difficult as people think it is. It's just not.
Right.
And so, I mean, the border is this a vast expanse of space, and with, and we have a lot of capabilities now that I could tell the federal government today where every single tunnel is in under, I could tell them where every single one of them is if they would let me do it, if they would let me tell them. And I could tell them today where they're at. But it's just that type of thing that it's frustrating from our standpoint, but we're, this convergence zone, look at the border states being the primary area of that, even the northern border states at this point, Washington, Idaho, Montana, places like just wide open border, like you can walk across it and nobody's going to stop you. And so there's a massive amount of Chinese and Iranians in the Vancouver, British Columbia area, huge communities up there. Matter of fact, a lot of people don't realize this, but like Iran has a large embassy in Mexico. But they also have, Canada is the largest, outside of the Middle East, is the Iranian, it's the largest population of Iranians in the world is in Canada outside of Iran. Out of anywhere else, it's Canada. So there's a lot to that, and like that's something that we should be taking note of, or those types of things, and because it's easy to cross into Canada and from here and things of that nature. Like it's very, very simple. And so if people aren't paying attention to those things, and the Chinese next, like China is not our friend. I don't know how many times I can say this to people. China is not our friend. Like we should be doing everything we can to not support China or Chinese initiatives. I'm not saying all Chinese people are bad. There's some good Chinese people, but if we're going to allow Chinese people to be here, they need to swear a new oath that I am not a member or in any way affiliated with the CCP. If you're going to go to college here, you need to swear this oath. If you're going to, because then it sets up for whatever they may try to do later if they do that. And I do believe that we live in a nation where a lot of bad actors come here. They get assimilated into society and they say, this isn't too bad. And I do believe that, because I think they're told such lies in a lot of the nations that they come from their entire life. They're told these things about these people and those people and whatever. And it's shut off from the outside world.
Right.
And I do believe that once people get here, either they just disconnect from their home nation, or for, whoever their handlers are or whatever, or because it's easy for them to do that here. They can pretty easily cut them off and disappear into society here. And like, or we flip them. I think there's an 80% chance that we do that with people is flip them, flip them, but doesn't mean that the risk is not still very high. And because of that convergence and these foreign state actors, the proxies, the terrorist organizations, because and what it boils down to is their goods, whether it's weapons or explosives or whatever, any of that type of stuff, or it's money or it's people, they are all moving through the same channels. And now this globalism and everything's made it easier for them to do all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I also like what's concerning about China, especially and Chinese nationals coming here, and even if they do flip, right, or even if they do, are like, oh, this isn't so bad, I'm not going to work for China anymore. They still, if they have family back home, right, if they still have family in mainland China, like the CCP will use that as leverage against them to get information, and under their own laws, right, under Chinese law, every citizen, whether they're abroad or whether they're in China, is required to operate as an intelligence asset. Not in so many words, but in the, like, if you're approached and like they ask you questions, you're supposed to answer truthfully, and you're supposed to give it whatever information they ask for. And if you don't, or if you refuse, or if you lie or whatever, then it could impact your family back home. And that's where they get a lot of these people. So even though they may love it here, right? They like, oh, this is so much better than China, where I'm from. Like, this is so much better than my life there. But you also have, if you have brothers, sisters, parents still there, like, then now it becomes an issue of you still have to either track or vet, or like, there's a lot that needs to go into this. I just don't think it's happening.
No, it's not. It's not happening at all. And
then people just fall for propaganda so easy today that they don't think that China is bad or our enemy, just like they don't think Russia is bad or our adversary as well. Maybe Russia's not quite as terrible as it was during the Soviet Union, but it's still an adversarial nation to the United States. They still, they're still combating the West and Western civilization every day.
What they're competing for, the same is true for China, and I don't even look at, so from a geopolitical standpoint and other things, like Europe is Europe. They're one nation in my eyes from a geopolitical standpoint. None of them are powerful enough as a single state to matter. And that's just being honest. And so that's where the European Union came into play. That's why they did that, to say, oh, collectively we have this, right? Like, and more or less is that if they were to bring all those nations, if in the way the U.S., and this goes back to like the U.S. Constitution and how things were set up here, is really the United States was set up to where every state was its own little nation, and then just without checked borders, right? Like has its own state government. It runs itself, the power, and that's where the powers with the people stuff, it's because it flows all the way down, right? Like that's the way it's set up, because you elect local leaders that and all the way to the top. And so European Union has done something, that was the whole reason they created it, was to be able to project European influence and power around the world through. And not only that, but to be able to compete with the US dollar collectively.
Right.
So what's happening, like, because of what we've done in Venezuela and now Iran, Cuba's next, and it's a matter of time before they just collapse. It's not going to last. They can't. But collectively, with those, it's all been about the U.S. dollar power and influence in oil and gas primarily, with BRICS. And so you're going to see, because of what we've done in Venezuela and Iran, you're going to see, whether it's through things like convergence and that in covert warfare and that irregular warfare, we're going to see those things ramp up from China towards us. They say, oh, Mr. Trump, you're being bad boy. Now we got to respond to this, but they're not going to do it publicly,
right,
and overtly. They're going to do it covertly, and they're going to hit, and it's going to hurt. They'll hit us hard. A perfect example of that is the Valero refinery in Texas.
mm-hmm.
That's a perfect example of covert operations that most likely started with either people in-house within Valero or back doors because of the equipment that they purchased, and through Chinese and Iranian hacking capabilities. And so that's a perfect example of that. Like, those things have been happening at water treatment facilities and at other refineries and these things have been happening. And this is where it gets dangerous. So from again, this irregular asymmetric warfare point of view gets very tricky. Is AI pretty cool in a lot of ways? And is it also very dangerous? Both are true, right? Like, right. So prior to the AI boom at oil and gas refineries, all of the internal systems were air gap systems. So they were very safe and free from being hacked and all that type of stuff. That's not the case anymore. With AI, they said, oh, no, well, now we need to be able to utilize the cloud and collect this data. Well, guess what, folks, is go ahead and you got the money. You're a huge oil and gas company. You need to go ahead and do why don't you do everything here in-house versus the stupid cloud? And what it is they got really bad advice from somebody that didn't really know what they were talking about and left them extremely vulnerable on the other side of the house. And now they have a refinery that's not operating for, 3 to 4 months because of it. And I don't know what the dollar amounts are for a refinery of that size that isn't operating for 3 to 4 months, but it's substantial.
Substantial for sure. That kind of reminds me, it was like a medical company. I don't know if you heard about this. They got attacked and they used the Microsoft, whatever system they were using, that kind of linked everything together to delete everyone's systems. Like what all it took was one nefarious actor to come in with credentials and they deleted everything. Man, I can't remember which company.
Yeah, I can't remember the name. I did hear about that though. Yeah. What's amazing to me, and this is where H-1B visas are risky.
Yeah.
So business owners,
that's the thing I'm against. I'm against Trump on too, and that's like this is what's crazy about today is there's no nuance involved, right? You're either like 100% for someone or you're 100% against them, and it's just silly to me. It's like, no, like he's wrong. He was wrong, like you said, necessarily on the FDO stuff, and he's wrong on the visa thing too. Like, why aren't we cultivating ways to get people? I know it takes a little longer, right?
I'll tell you exactly why. And this is what nobody's saying about the leadership in DC. And it doesn't matter if it's Trump, because he's wrong. It doesn't matter if it's Congress, or it doesn't matter if it's red or blue. They're all wrong. But it all comes down to one, because all of them, and it doesn't matter because, let's call the spade a spade. And I know this is probably going to ruffle some people's feathers. I don't care.
Me neither.
Trump's sons are making more money off of this administration than any presidential family in history. And nobody's like saying, we don't see a moral problem with this. It's wrong. It is. It's wrong. Absolutely wrong. There's no reason why somebody should be putting this came out the other day, should be putting a message over to the Pentagon to loan a company that to loan money to a company that Trump's sons are affiliated with, to loan for a contract or whatever it is. Should never happen. No. Never happen. If you or I were to do that, or any of your viewers were to do that, we'd wind up in prison, but not them, right? And not any of the political elite regardless of political party. I don't want to get wrapped around the axle on that, because the two-party system right now is what is wrong with this nation. And I just want to be very clear with that, because that's what's created the more and more divide. And because the answer lies in the middle. It's not far right or far left. The answer is in the middle. And that's where you're going to find the bulk of the people. And, but to take that out of it, like H-1B visas, the Republicans want the cheap labor and they want the jobs. That's why nothing's changed with, like, in a major way, nothing's changed with immigration in 30, 40 years. And what do the Democrats want? They want the votes. So guess what? It's a trade-off. The Republicans get the cheap labor, and the Democrats get the votes, and everybody's happy. In their world, everybody's happy. And in our world, we're not happy. Right. So, but that's exactly what's happening. And but the H-1B visas are dangerous for companies. So what's it worth to your company? I mean, that's the truth is you can do that, but what are you putting? You're quite literally putting yourself at such a risk that you might not be able to recover from. And and that's just the truth. And there's no way, especially if you're the one that signed as their sponsor, good luck. Like, good luck.
Well, that's a problem. The universities, especially the research that's being done in universities, we're taking taxpayer dollars, and then you have CCP, you have Qatari, you have all these different people that are involved in all of this, and they're using that. And this is another thing too, that's just another, like, people don't really realize it, that how much of big pharma and big business gets grants from the federal government to do the research for what they're doing, and then they get 100% of the profits afterwards. So they're not spending money on R&D, and they're not putting aside a ton of money for that, because they're getting federal grants for it. So we're paying for these companies to research and develop, and then we're paying for it again to use the products that they come out with, and they're just profiting off of it. And this is a huge problem all across the board in every industry, and no one ever wants to talk about it, because once you get into politics, that's the way the world works. And so then you're inside of that world, and if you want to stay inside of that world and operate, then you have to get on board. And so it's just like everyone talks like, yes, we have definite foreign influence issues on our government, and the foreign
we saw
lobbying.
That the other day, they had a member of the CCP was arrested that was a mayor in California. So
yes. Yep. Oh, so me and a buddy that does research with me on stuff have a lot to go on there. We've sent a lot to law enforcement, and then kind of got it vetted, and what we can post publicly and what we can't. She's already arrested, so there's a lot more leeway. But there's a lot of things going on right now that we can't even make public, because law enforcement's so far behind on getting all of it. It could tip the hand, and these people would disappear, or they would change their TTPs or whatever they're doing, and now they could get off with it. So we're holding on to a lot of the research that we've done too, and not putting it out, because we need law enforcement to catch up. We need the government to catch up and actually stop some of these things that are happening. And that's like Nick Shirley's doing great things. He's exposing fraud, but if was that stuff sent to law enforcement ahead of time before it broke the story, so that they could, get everything wrapped up how they needed, so that all of the people could go to jail, or did it break and then tip off a bunch of them so that they could, dot their I's and cross their T's, and then get out of the country, or move, or do whatever to avoid being caught. So this is we have this weird dynamic right now of, we need investigations, and we need some public help in those investigations, but it also has to be a little bit more important than clicks and likes and your monetization as well, because like I said, there's some stories that we could have already pushed, but we've sent them to law enforcement, and we're waiting to hear back that they've done the investigations that they need, and they've got everything tied up how they need it before we go public with it. And I wish more people would kind of do that, because like I said, it's important. We need your help. Like, like we've been talking this whole episode that law enforcement's are overwhelmed and understaffed, and technologically they're not there yet, and all the other issues that go along with that. So
I would say not just technologically, but like even from a investigative perspective, right? So like, in order for something that we send to law enforcement or you send to law enforcement, in order for it to be beneficial to them, you have to be able to tie it to a crime, like definitively.
Right.
And if you can't, then to them, it's just like, thanks for the tip. We'll keep an eye on them, that type of thing. But like, it has to be able to be definitively tied to a crime in order for it to really matter. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's just they're not going to worry about it. And they're too busy, and so they're going. Sorry,
I was pulling up this, and I agree with you. Ruckus said nobody was ever going to look into what Nick Shirley exposed until he exposed it. I agree with you from a standpoint, yes. Like, and I'm not. I think he's doing great things. It's helping. I hope he's also. They're backing everything up and they're sending it to law enforcement before some of these things can be deleted. That's my only, and again, he might be doing that. And if he is, that's awesome. There's no, concerns or negative, but I'm just saying, hopefully that is happening, because, it would be a shame to, now everybody knows that it was happening, but if we can't prosecute these people for what they've done, then it just, then it's just a story. And it helps in the future, but some of these people are going to still get away with it.
Right. So. And I do want to, so you mentioned the universities and IP theft and things of that nature. So back when we wrote the state of Texas Homeland Security policy, and this is where I was like, man, they're going to pick this thing up. They've got to, based off of this fact. And if we were to have conducted the operations and done what we could have and had planned to do in the counterintelligence space to protect Texas companies' IP and innovative technology sector and universities and research institutions and places of that nature, if we would have done that, we would have saved the state of Texas and Texas taxpayers $750 billion, and also federal grants, $750 billion over a 10-year period of time. That was what the math equated to once we broke it all down. And that's what it came out to after over a 10-year period. That would have been the economic, that's a big number. And you're like, that's one state for 10 years. That's the economic impact of that. And so
insane,
but
it's so much money.
So how many students do we have that go to school, U.S. citizens that go to school in China for, say, grad school, whatever, or go over there at all for school, but use a student visa to go over there? How many do you think that is on average?
Minimal. I mean, I would say not very many.
About 2,000.
Yeah. So
about 2,000. Yeah. Hardly any in the grand scheme of things. How many Chinese nationals are going to school in the United States?
Millions.
It's over, like, collectively, because let's say they're here for 4 years. They're here for longer than that, because I'll explain that in a second too. I'll get into that. But yes, but 600,000 a year are here on student visas. 600,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. Big discrepancy. It's like, it's not, the numbers aren't there, right? Like if we were sending 600,000 and they sent 600,000 here, like whatever happened to the term foreign exchange program? Like you get the same amount we get, and then, that type of thing. And I just go back to that because the whole program doesn't make any sense to me. And so 600,000 Chinese nationals here. There's 600,000 Indian nationals here. These are just student visas per year. And then what was started during Obama's administration, and this is one of the issues with the irregular threats right now and things of that nature. there's about 10 to 12,000 Iranian nationals here. And that was something we restarted after Obama's nuclear deal was allowing 10,000 plus to come here on student visas. And here's the big issue to before I get into how things kind of flow after that. But what happens, like, people have to understand, in places like China and Iran, they don't go down to their local post office and apply for a passport and then just get to come. It doesn't work that way. Whether that's a travel, like that's just for general travel, or that's for a student visa, these nations, the way they operate, they go back 3 generations to see if you've been had any ill will towards the party and that type of stuff. And if you haven't, great, you can go. But if you have, guess what? You don't get to. Doesn't mean that we still can't flip them and do other things. But like now, every single person should, for like if there's a person here from China and they're on a student visa, or they're an intern at a research institution, or they're an H-1B job holder from China, like, I'm not trying to say that they may not. I mean, some of them are great people. I'm sure they are. But the risk is huge, and the odds are actually in more favor that they're passing some form of information than not.
Right. Well, and their government like vetted them and allowed them to come.
That's right.
They're not going to, like you just said, they're not going to allow somebody to come, and they're tracking them the whole time they're gone.
That's right.
So
they have, they are required every year. Sometimes, depending on where they're at and what position they're in, whatever they're doing, they're required to check into the consulate. Required. What do you think happens when they check into the consulate? They ask them how their goals, how they're accomplishing what they were set out to do. And but like when it comes to the IP theft and finding out who these people are and how a lot of this stuff is being done completely legally. It's just they know our laws and things better than we do. And I just want to be very clear about that. They are very skilled at it. And that's where the birth tourism comes in. Those are real things. They happen all the time. That happens all over the place. And a lot of this stuff is like, we're getting to that, like the water's been getting, is lukewarm, and now it's getting hot, or it's been boiling. And we're getting to that boiling point now where things are about to tip over for a lot of this, because it's been going on for too long. And ultimately, Mitch McConnell has a big part to play in this. That dude's crooked as crooked can be. And so does, I really respect George W. Bush. George Bush and his father are responsible for this too. And so, and it all goes back to Mitch McConnell's wife is directly tied to the CCP. And so, and a lot of people don't know that, but I mean, when I mean directly tied to it, like directly tied to it. And so, her father owns one of the largest shipping companies in the world. And so, and that's another big, stressor, is like our ports and ports within Latin America. Like, China's kicked our butt in terms of foreign investment and being able to assist other nations. Well, like Canada, for instance, before Trump took office, and this is what I mean by law enforcement being behind the curve and behind the crime cycle, the cartels were 10 steps ahead of the U.S. government and anybody within it, from a sense that they had already shifted operations from fentanyl being produced in Mexico. Like the bulk of the fentanyl has not been produced in Mexico since before Trump was in office anyway. It's been produced in Canada. And it's still, a lot of the flow is now coming from north to south and not the other way. And all they did was was get ahead of it, and they did it before Biden left office. But they own the port in Vancouver, so like that's how precursors getting in and things of that nature. And again, nobody can stop them across most of the northern border unless you go to a port. I mean, it's not happening. And so,
right.
But yeah. So what happens to backtrack a little bit? What happens with people come in on a student visa? And this happens with the Indian population. This happens with the Chinese population. Happens with all of them. This is what happens. They come in on that student visa. That student visa turns into an internship of some sort. And then during those years, they wind up getting married to somebody of the same nationality. The moment that they get married, they wind up having a baby. That kid is now their anchor baby. That kid is under current law is now a U.S. citizen. Now we've got a bigger problem. And so then what happens? And this is where it'll make sense where a lot of this influx of people is coming from.
Just dropped off the thing over there.
And I was like, what was that? It just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it just fell.
So what happens is they come in, they have the kid at some point during that time period. Now that because it's a U.S. citizen, we're not going to force them to leave. And that's what we do. And so then both sets of grandparents want to come see little Johnny, and what happens? They never leave. So now what started as two internship or two student visas, now you have essentially 7 individuals now in the United States, one being a U.S. citizen, but 6 are essentially all visa overstays to varying degrees, whatever that looks like. And nobody's tracking it. So like in North Texas, we have a very large Indian population here. In a very large Asian population at large. But especially with the Chinese and the Indian population, that's exactly how it's happening. It's exactly how the people are getting here.
Texas has, they have those problems. They have the Arab Islamic problem. That's huge. I mean, one of the things I broke I had already sent it to Ken Paxton's people and some others. But there's, that Pure Hands, which is a nonprofit out of Plano, Texas, that sent $750 million to Yemen, and it's just $750 million. I think 40 or 50 million of it was in cash, and the rest was for medical aid. And that's like all they put on there. Like that's the scrutiny that it got, was just, we can send almost $1 billion to a country like Yemen, which is, if anybody knows anything about Yemen, it's highly corrupt. The Houthis run a lot of it, and the Houthis are a Iranian proxy terrorist organization. And so who just moved money through an American nonprofit to avoid taxes on it, and then sent it to what could potentially be, terrorists in a third world country? So
that's exactly what it's going to support. And it's going to support the ultimately that it's going to go support whatever they're going to do in the Red Sea and in hitting Israel or U.S. Personnel. And that's what most people just don't understand, is how easily all of this stuff is connected. And how, whether it's money or whatever, well, how did they get that much cash there? How did they get that much cash?
Right. And that one, there was no federal grants. That's not state money. That's not federal money. Right. So we're not talking about taxpayer dollars that are funding this, but we are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that went tax-free and was a write-off for somebody doing who knows what, right? To move through this nonprofit that then is now sending it over. And from what I can tell, other than they have an office in Plano, they don't actually do anything stateside. All of their they're linked to Turkey. Yeah, they're linked to Turkey, they're linked to Yemen, and they're linked to Pakistan. They have like all these different things. So everything's abroad. So it's a way to move money through the United States so that it's not scrutinized, and then get it over there to these other places, as disguised as aid. Kind of like the same thing they did in Gaza. I mean, they took billions and billions of dollars, and then there was Americans that made a lot of money off of Gaza. That these nonprofits that were like, we're feeding the Gazan children. Like they weren't, they weren't actually doing anything over there. They would do a photo op, and they would do a video showing how much they help like one little village or whatever they did. But then where does all the rest of that money go? Because it's not scrutinized, because we don't have the manpower, we don't have the time or the ability to scrutinize every single transaction from these nonprofits. And that's another big problem too that I've talked about. Like, so not only do we have the nonprofit problem, right, and that's just the NGO and environment altogether, from not just from Muslims, but from just leftist organizations and how they've coordinated, but also like the church issue. And when I say church, it's just because that's what it is in the IRS code. Everything that's, whether it's a synagogue, whether it's that
goes back to like 1912, 1915 time frame, and
so.
And it's a huge problem. They don't have to disclose anything
at all. And that's why I tell people, I'm like, these nonprofits at least have to disclose a 990 so that you may not be able to tell where everything's going, but you can at least see the money. So somewhat, right?
But if you can see the money and it's tracked by the IRS, then it can be tracked, essentially. Right. It can be, because then a bank account or whatever is connected to that as well.
Yes.
Whereas and through FinCEN and all the different things. Well, when for church purposes, and you don't have to publicly disclose anything under the code, that's a problem. And
they just have to keep their records.
But why has that not changed?
I don't. That's something that has to change, because in most churches,
because it makes it easy for the people in DC to do the same thing. That's why it hasn't changed.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And
so
I mean,
it's insane to me.
It's just it's a way for them to avoid the why would they change it if they benefit from it, right? It's just crooked's going to do what crooked does. But like, it means a lot to me when I hear people that are career criminals that spent most of their life in prison, when they're from being in organized crime, actually, when they say, when they say in an interview, if I could do anything over again, what would I do? And they say I would start a church.
Yep.
What does that tell you?
It tells you that's the way you can move money and nobody knows. Like all these mosques. And I mean, I'm sure there's some churches that are doing nefarious things too, that are, under the guise of Christianity. They're acting like, I mean, Joel Osteen or Osteen, or however you say his name. I mean, he's made a lot of money, right? Yeah. Smiling. Like, he's made a lot of money, and who knows where all that's come from, who knows what all it's involved in, whatever. Like, he doesn't have to disclose that. Right. And, so you have that issue, but then you have these mosques. You have some of these mosques that are linked to very radical. I mean, we're talking about imams that were, when Khamenei was killed, they're saying that their leader was murdered by the evil U.S. regime, and blah 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 blah. And they're living in the United States, and they're operating, and they're in charge of a mosque, or they're a very big part of a mosque here. And that mosque doesn't have to tell anyone how much money it's gotten or what it's doing with that money or anything.
Huge,
I mean,
issue. Yeah,
big. I mean,
and for the viewers, I just want to, like, when something has been on the books as a tax code or something like that over 100 years ago, it's probably time that we take a look at it. Because obviously technology's changed and other things have changed. Well, Islam wasn't really on anybody's radar in 1915 as being something to be hugely concerned about at the time. Now, like, just to kind of walk everybody through history, we were at war with Islamic people, the people in the Muslim faith, since Thomas Jefferson.
Yep.
So, like,
Barbary
going
Wars.
back to the Barbary Wars, that was our first, as a nation, those were our first international conflicts, and it was with the Islamic community. And I say that not because there's not there are some people that are very, very good people, and even friends of mine. So I don't want to paint with a broad brush and say that all are bad. That's not true. But there are certain sects, the extreme sects, and this is true for Christianity too. So don't get like, or for any religion, you get out there into the extremes on anything, and any too much of anything is what, bad for you. Same thing is true in this. You get to the extremes and it's bad. It's bad for the nation. It's bad for anybody. You don't want to be associated with it. And that's just the way it is. But like if a mosque is openly preaching and speaking out, Khomeini was their leaders, probably not a good place. Like that should be like, I would be raising the red flag if I was in that area. And that's things like local law enforcement, for instance. Those are things local officers can pay attention to, is what is this, like, do a local search of how many mosques are in your area. If you're in a populated state, I think you'd be really surprised, a lot more than you think. And why do you think that all of these mosques don't exist because people show up when the doors open or whatever? That's not why they're there. They're there to move the money. That's it.
Yep.
And so like we look at things like, well, why do all of these things exist, right? Like they're there to move the money. It's not about as many, like the big ones do both. They move money. They have Islamic schools. They allow people to come and pray, and they do their thing. And well, ultimately, there's just this massive amount of them because it's there to move dollars. And and what carries more weight than anything? The US dollar. So they would rather have their people in the United States than anywhere else. And so like, just because, how do we track, targeting purposes, how do we go through? And well, terrorist organizations can't do anything without funding, and they have to have it from somewhere. And they're not making it in Afghanistan and Pakistan, I can promise you. So like all of the money that they are utilizing for their operations in some form or fashion is generally coming through illicit means, drugs. Like at the time we went to, I found this really ironic going back to when I was in Afghanistan, is like Al Qaeda and the Taliban to kind of working together on it, but had the largest piracy operations of movies in the world at the time. But what did all these soldiers go buy at the market? Pirated movies, like at the at the different fobs and
the bazaar.
The bazaar. You get all these pirated movies, and I'm like, why are we buying these? It's like directly funding the enemy. And
it's like Beats by Ahmed, like they're like the Beats, but they're not the real Beats. They're not like the Beats by Dre. Like we used to joke about it all the time, dude. And that's how it's the piracy aspect and the fake. Like when we were in Africa, for example, we went to go get local phones, so that we could, we didn't want to do all of our personal communications back home and stuff on, we wanted to leave that there, and we wanted to leave, keep our phones there separate. We bought a bunch of Samsung Galaxies, and when we got back to the base and I like started looking into them and we're trying to get them all set up, I was looking through the serials online, and none of them were actually real Samsungs. They were, like fake Chinese copies, or they were, or whatever they were. They're fake. They're not the real phone. So like they definitely have back doors in them. They're not going to work. And they didn't work that well. They were terrible. So we were like, these are literally only for like communication about like, just like with locals about local things that are not sensitive whatsoever. Like nothing else goes on these phones. You're not your name. Like you use a fake name, like whatever. And so we had to use them from that regard. But yeah, it's just, that's how it is in the rest of the world. It's another thing. Most Americans don't even know. They have no idea. They have no idea like how these.
Yeah, if you're in business and you want to manufacture something, China's not the place to do it. Why? Because the moment that you do, part of your agreement is going to be IP. You're going to share that IP now with the CCP, and essentially, or they'll just take it, rip it out from underneath you, and they'll relabel it and resell it as something else, as a different name. And so just be prepared for that, that if you're doing business with China, your crap's taken. So in other words, what I'm saying is we should completely 100% divest everything out of China. And it should happen as quickly as humanly possible. And because I'm the sense we're this close, China would collapse very quickly because they can't hardly feed their people as it is. If we divested of China, they would collapse very quickly. But until we do that, we're helping sustain the CCP. And so if American leadership actually has some balls about them, they'll tell American companies, you need to completely divest of China for whatever reasons and be done with it.
Yeah. Man, I did a post. It was a while back. I'll see if I can find it. They did an audit on DoD systems, and this is years ago. And it was under Obama when Obama was still there. And the report came out that I think it was 80% of everything we would need to like warfight, to like successfully warfight, came from China, or at least some component of it was coming from China. So to the point where if we were to actually go to war with China, they would just cut off the supply chain, and we wouldn't be able to create anything else, and we'd be so far behind the curve that it'd be insurmountable.
Yeah, I've actually got a graphic on that. Let's see if I can. I've got one on the supply chain stuff that goes. It shows all of the flows on all. I mean, it's pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm able to find that. I don't know. I don't remember how long ago it was that I did it, but man, it was one of those things that when I like read the report, I was like, "Are you kidding me? This is real bad. This is real bad." And I mean, hopefully we're a little bit better today. I don't think we're that much better. I think we still are so heavily reliant on China for a lot of things.
We are absolutely one. And it came out the other day, like that so part of what China's doing too is they're finding out which companies of ours have been sold to other foreign investment, like the UAE or somewhere that the actual company that owns it, not operates it, but owns it, is listed in the UAE or wherever. Well, the company that owns or that creates all the pistons for the majority of the aircraft was owned by a UAE company, and then China bought it from them.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened? Well, that China's been the sole owner of that company that controls almost all of our aircraft pistons for nearly a decade. So
that's insane. Yeah.
And like it doesn't even make sense at all as to how these things keep occurring. And
yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find it, but maybe I'll find it and try to post it later. But yeah, I mean, these are probably like there's so many problems. It's almost to the point where like I'm like, how do we even fix this? From like nothing's gonna get done legislatively with the two-party system. They're never going to do anything that's actually beneficial to the American people because they're so caught up in all these other issues and other things that they care about more.
It's just corruption. Like part of the problem is Ken Paxton, for instance, extremely corrupt individual, but he just beat Cornyn. And I'm not saying Cornyn's any better. Truth is, neither one of them are good, and aren't good for the state of Texas. That's just the honest truth. But Cornyn's 74 years old. What's wrong with just retiring?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And what like we've got too many people in Senate and in Congress that are old. Like, why to be normal? Like, retire. Why is it that important? Oh, I know why. Because everybody that's bought you off, that was what you owe to them, is to stay in it for as long as you possibly can. Is your power and influence. Because then if we actually had term limits, guess what? Everybody had to get bought off time and time and time again, and then it wouldn't work. And so that's what it boils down to. And if I was Trump, I'd figure out a way to sign an executive order and at least put it out, because if he signed an executive order for term limits today, anybody that didn't vote yes on it should be voted out.
Yep.
Period.
I mean, they'd have to be on record.
They'd have to, that's right. That's what it is, be on record. That's right. They'd have to challenge it. And so what's wrong with raising the question? Like, if I was Trump and you've said that you support this stuff, then do it. Don't just talk about it. Don't just be lip service up there, which he's really good at, but do something, have a backbone. You know, don't just talk about, oh, I'm going to bomb Iran. Well, you do, but like when it comes to your reactions and negotiations, you sure are good at kicking the can.
Right.
Like it's not just about oil and the Strait of Hormuz and all of that type of stuff. Like, dude, eventually this isn't going to work out for you because you keep just saying, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and then you don't do it. And obviously I'm not privy to all the information that they are, but the optics aren't good from on the outside regardless. And so don't tell the American people and run on the fact that you agree with term limits or whatever the issue may be, and then not willing to force it down Congress and Senate. Your job is to force it down their throat when you run on something, so that they will have to act on it. Yeah, that's the point. Yep. And
I mean, well, it's like
checks and balances.
I don't understand why Thune hasn't forced a vote on the SAVE Act, even though we can't pass it right now. Why don't you force them to do a filibuster to defeat the SAVE Act, right? Like, I just don't understand why that hasn't even been brought to the floor yet for the Senate. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, why? I understand that we probably do not have 60 votes for this, right? I get it, but let's get these people on record voting against, having, or saying we don't care about voter ID and we don't care about safe elections and all this, why don't we get that on record so that people can then you have media talking points. You have talking points that everybody can be like, look, these are all the people that don't care about safe and secure elections. And then they're on record now saying that they don't care about that. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think this is a big one. Ultimately, I think it really just comes down to politics and favors, and he owes people favors, and he knows that they're not going to be willing to do it, so he hasn't brought it to a vote.
Yeah, it's like, man, how about the fact that we still send 40 to 87 million to the Taliban each week? And so for people that don't understand, those payments were to the Afghan government, right? So initially it didn't start as payments to the Taliban, but guess who runs the government in Afghanistan now since Biden's withdrawal? The Taliban. So now, and since then, which has been how many years now, right? We still are sending this amount of money and knowing that it's going to a terrorist organization, and no one's stopped it. No one's there's still been nothing done about it. It's insane. And in the grand scheme of things, 40 to 87 million dollars doesn't seem that much. But guess what? The 9/11 attack, guess how much that cost the terrorists as a whole? Somewhere around $250,000, really. It wasn't that much. It was a very cheap attack on us. And it forced the United States to then change our entire security protocols, not only TSA, right? Not only in those federal stuff like that for transportation, but every single base in the United States added lockdown and added security. Every federal building, everything locked down, and it did security. It cost us billions and billions of dollars to do that. So that's another 5G level of warfare that they're using against us. Is they use something that's very cheap, and they can do an attack that way. And then it's the response that we have to give behind it is massive and very costly. And a lot of people don't think about that either. So that $40 to $87 million we're giving weekly to the Taliban is an inordinate amount of money to them and to what they're trying to do in the world. So it's really bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's in like literally down the street is one of the places we print and produce coins and whatnot, the Mint here at Fort Worth. And but like they're literally printing the money, putting it on pallets and headed to an aircraft to fly it straight into Kabul. And there's no rhyme or reason. And Congressman Burchett did a great job of getting that through the House, and it's sitting there that's also sitting with the Senate right now, and they're not doing anything about it. The only thing that I can, not that they don't care more about the religious aspect of things than they do money, but, and this is just me, the way I think about it and the way I see it and the way I kind of have analyzed it and believed to be true. But why, if I was getting paid that amount of money per week, I'm not going to shut that faucet off. I'm going to delay that terrorist attack that may or may not happen here within the U.S. homeland. I'm going to delay that for as long as possible while I'm just collecting cash coming in. Why not? So I think that the U.S. government is paying for that not to be a possibility from that potential actor, is what I believe. And that's essentially what we're paying for is the guarantee that that's not going to happen. But, and here's the big but, not only are you delaying the inevitable, but you are allowing them to vastly improve their capabilities in the meantime.
Yep.
That's what people don't understand about what was so. Did we need to leave Afghanistan? Not in the way that we did. That's for damn sure.
Right.
But did we need to get the bulk of our people out of there and just run? It was majority was special operations anyway. The vast majority of it. But why? When we fragment a group like we did Al Qaeda and the Taliban, when you fragment them in that sense and spread them to the four winds, they can't operate and they don't have the ability to get together to plan and strategize and do all these different things that they can very easily do now to improve capabilities and whatnot. Now you've got these central hubs that were gone. They weren't there. Now they're training people with the Camp Chapman's now a suicide bombing training facility in Coast. Things of that nature should not be occurring. And what happened to when we pulled out? Why did we not carpet bomb the crap out of every single thing that we owned in that? If we were pulling out the way we did, why did we not carpet bomb it? And say carpet bomb, not in a different
not
sense,
civilians, but you mean all of our equipment that we left, the $7 billion worth of equipment we left to the Taliban,
and the infrastructure we put in with the installations and stuff, so they couldn't be utilized as military installations for them. Why did we not destroy it?
Right.
I don't care if the Taliban are on site. If they're on site when they roll through and do that, too bad. We told you it was coming.
Yeah.
But I think we've got this far left ideology that we have to win. Politicians lose wars. Let's just be very clear about that. Politicians lose wars. We're not the ones. If you were to leave it up to the warfighter and leave it up to the community, especially special operator, because it's what I know. I can speak to that much easier than I can anything else. But like in what I experienced in the withdrawal, what was so special is you give operators a task and the standard and the time frame in which you need something done, they will blow your mind with what they can get done. And especially if you just step back and like, you don't have to micromanage them. That's the part of the beauty of it. But you literally just say, here's what, and this is what I've carried into, my business is I don't micromanage anybody. I say, here's the standard, here's the time frame, here's what we got to get done, and let them. I don't care how they slice the pie. I just want the pie sliced. And
right.
And as long as that pie gets sliced to the standard, it's fine. But we get that. We understand that because we came from a community of standards and how important those are, and not letting people slide on what those standards are. Like that's a part of that. Like if I tell you that the cutoff is, in order for you to get 100% or whatever on your PT test, you got to be able to do 72 push-ups in 2 minutes. And if you do 70, it's not 100. Well, right. A lot of people are going to give them the 100 anyway. Close enough, buddy. We're not like, and it was in a world that if you're not maxing out your PT test, you're not going to stay there much longer. It's just, even though you'd be a stud anywhere else in the military, but if you're not maxing out your PT test here, then are you really fit for us?
Right.
That's right. What it is every day. And so, it makes it really easy, but yeah, the wars are 100% lost by the politicians. They think that winning this hearts and minds and us doing, they don't care. All right. Like they just don't care. They care about their religion and their power in which they see it in that region. Like Iran, for instance, Iran doesn't really care that much about projecting global power. They really don't. They know they don't have the power to be able to do it. In the Iranian regime, that is the Khomeinis and IRGC and stuff like that. That's what I talk about. But like, if you were to take a crescent moon and like plop it over the Middle East, and that point, if you were to from one point, which is where Iran is at, it would arc up and it would hit Israel and Lebanon. That is the sphere of influence that they care the most about. Yep. And if what they don't like, and the reason we're enemies of theirs, is because we have so much power and influence in that region. So like they want us out,
and not just with Israel, with the Gulf states,
the nation states, the Gulf,
with the Arab nations, like all of these that we have a lot of influence in. That's why I try to always tell people this, dude, like stop thinking of Iran as this like country that just plays in its own little sandbox. It doesn't. It has funded and pushed with the Quds Force, which is just the outside version of the IRGC, is pushing all of these proxy organizations from Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the different Shia militias inside of Iraq and Syria. And the whole goal here is to destabilize not only the Middle East, but Northern Africa. And they would go more into Turkey if they could, but Turkey is able to kind of push some of it back and keep it into that realm. But they don't care actually that, there are other Muslim nations. They don't care about any of that. They care about destabilizing it. They also are working with China, because what's China trying to do? They're trying to win economically with the Belt and Road Initiative. And so they're like, you scratch our backs, we scratch yours. You create chaos. You create, you get rid of the people in government that would, stand to align with the United States or to align with Western nations. And instead we'll push chaos in there so that we can get them to align with the Belt and Road Initiative. And so this is all great power competition at the end of the day. And I was talking about this with some other guys on a previous show, but, Trump's not perfect. There's a lot of things that we've already talked about that we disagree with some of the things, but what the whole government initiative right now, and I disagree. The longer this pause goes on and the longer we could have finished Iran off and done some other things, I do think that maybe the UW environment is what they're trying to let foster. And I can kind of see that aspect, but I also think you could still be dropping bombs, and you could still, and you don't have to go on the media and be like, well, I just had a great conversation with Hezbollah. Right. You know, like Hezbollah leadership doesn't care what you have to say. They're going to taquilla you all day long. They're going to tell you exactly what you want to hear, and then they're going to go out, literally hang up on that phone call, go out and launch rockets into Israel, into Syria, into like everywhere. Like that's just the way it's going to be. And so I'm like, you can't negotiate with these people. If you're going to use the negotiation as guys to allow UW and the irregular warfare aspects to unfold in the country, I can kind of understand that. But also, like, there's something that, like, I think there's some other things that need to be done here. I know, yeah, the blockade is strangleholding Iran and the Iranian regime. You know, they're not going to be able to last much longer. So that, from a strategic standpoint, is very good. The ability to say to China, hey, we can shut off 50% of your oil and 30% of your natural gas if we wanted to. You know, that's a good thing, right? It kind of puts China on notice that we have that power to force reject, and we can still keep a carrier group in the South China Sea area so that they like stay frisky. You know, you're not going to invade Taiwan. You're not going to do all these other things you want to do just because you think we're locked up over here. We're not, right? And so from a great power standing or competition standing, I do like what I'm seeing. And I do like, you know, the whole of government where the State Department is actually working with, you know, the DOW now. And, you know, everything's kind of meshing a lot better. And, you know, there was some strategy in going into Venezuela first and then going over to Iran and doing what happened there. Yeah. So I like all these things. It's just hard for people that don't understand, one, what great power competition even is. They don't understand how these different regimes work and how they work together and in kind of in a coordination against the West and the United States as a whole, really. It's just hard to get that message across, because then you get, you know, you could post the most thought out best post ever, right? And then someone's going to completely, like, it's just like the old saying, you know, you say something and then they're like, whoa, that means that you don't, like, you know, I sometimes, you know, would rather have a salad than noodles. And they're like, oh, so you hate ramen. I'm like, that's not what I said. You know, that it's just kind of that same concept of what the arguments always devolve to. So it's just really difficult to like explain to people like, hey, you know, this is actually a good thing, what's happening for the United States in the world. There's going to be some temporary pain because we let it get so bad. We let things go so far that there's no way to get out of it without pain, you know, without a little like.
And that's true. So that is, that same statement applies to China. There's no way for us to get out of doing business and being so in cahoots, if you will, with the CCP in China. Like, whose grand idea was it? We're like ideologically polar opposites of the CCP. And somebody said, yeah, let's go get in bed with these guys, because that makes a lot of sense. It doesn't work. So like, why did we so much of our economy, like, why did we not put that money into Mexico? And maybe we wouldn't have the problems with the cartels that we have today if we put it into Mexico. And I'm just, you know, I'm going to throw it out there.
It comes down to bottom line. I mean, that's what it all comes down to, is the cheapest labor is in China.
And so for all those people out there that let's go ahead and go with the far left on this one, because the far left wants to say that, oh, we're super friendly. We care about people's rights. And, you know, they want to put on their cheerleading outfits this month for Pride Month and talk about all this, that, and the other, whatever. And they want to say they're all about human rights. Well, guess what? You're the one that supports all of this over here and wants to be like this nation that, quite honestly, one, they would kill you for being for what your beliefs are and what and for being a homosexual or whatever those things. If you did that in those nations, they kill you. Like, you don't have you don't have a voice. So just be grateful that you actually have a voice here. and you can you get to be able to have that opinion without and live your life that way without somebody tying a rope around your neck in the public square, because that's exactly what would happen over there. And then to take that a step further on the human rights side of it, the reason the labor is the cheapest is because they farm everybody or bring everybody in from the farmland in China to do all the labor on. I mean, even building these iPhones. Like, why are these? I'd pay an extra $1,000 for a phone if it was made in America versus made in China. I would in a heartbeat, just to be able to say that it wasn't made over there. And who knows what back doors are put into these because it's made over there. And every other compute device that is made in China, which there's one company that makes like 70% of that type of stuff. And even though it's a Taiwanese company, all the manufacturing facilities are in Shanghai. And
it's kind of defeats the purpose.
Defeats the purpose, right? So like if they're in bed, and we already know that the CCP has a ton of influence in Taiwan, even though they act like they're gonna just drop, they're not gonna do that. It just like if I would imagine that there's a lot of things that are already backed up in China and in plans in place or in Taiwan for plans in place to make sure that the IP made it here and it was destroyed there in as many ways as possible if they were to start attacking them or whatever. I do believe that to be true. And that's another thing that maybe the viewers want to hear, like our ability to go in and get Maduro with a collective of 3 or 4 different special operations units. That wasn't like, they dreamt it up in December and they went on July 3rd or January 3rd type of thing. Like that was the intelligence community had been working on getting that access probably for many years, like many years. And it was, so like we are working to be in a position. So is other countries too. So don't think that it's just us operating this way. It's not, or just Israel or whatever. We are very much, they are very much doing the same thing to us that we are doing to them. And it takes years to get access to certain people or things. And so you better know, like you got to be working on it. So when they were willing and able to pull the trigger, regardless of who the president is, when they were willing and able to do it, they could. And that's the role of the military and the intelligence community as a whole, is to be able to provide opportunities and some flexibility regardless of who's president or not. It's like, we need to be able to have this capability. And that way, when we do pull the trigger, it's there. We can't go to the president and be like, no, well, we don't have anybody there, sir. We can't do that.
Right.
Probably not acceptable.
Yep. Well, and I mean, there's so much that goes on, goes into that, like getting access and placement, like you said, is a huge thing. That's also a huge part of the UW environment that would need to be happening in Iran now. So one of the things when people are like, why did we bomb them and then stop bombing them? I'm like, well, so think about it from a irregular warfare perspective. It was a completely denied area before the bombings, before February, right? Before we started hitting them and hitting the RGC, hitting the leadership, they had a stranglehold on that entire country. So maybe there was probably some human assets, not necessarily from the United States, but from Israel and the Gulf states that have a better understanding of Iran and have turned people in a way that takes years, like you said, to foster and to develop. But that's still a hostile, denied area, right? So you're not sending in teams, covertly or otherwise, because the risk for them to be then discovered and then, publicly executed on Iranian state TV is far too great, right? It's just not something anyone wants to deal with, or to be the one that they signed off on that. So the bombings opened up that entire area now to, to the most of Iran, where Tehran's still locked down. So you're not really operating there necessarily right now, but all the other provinces have weakened the IRGC into a point where like now they can police it still. They can still cause a disturbance on the population. The population is still not strong enough to overthrow them, but you have freedom of movement a little bit. You have the ability to conduct some of the things that need to be conducted. You need to build the auxiliary and the underground that has to happen. And that doesn't, that doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in a week. It doesn't happen in a month. Like we're talking, this is a long process. So,
right.
Though I do wish that, we could see tomorrow and they're like the Islamic Republic has fallen, and it was due to the Iranian people rising up. Like I just don't see that on this time frame, just because of how long this process takes and how hard it is, and especially the fact that you have to do it clandestinely. You have to do it under the radar. And you have to do it in a secure way so that you don't get caught and hung, in front of everybody. And that's just another thing that like most people don't understand, because they don't understand how tyrannical regimes operate.
Right.
So, trying to get that across to people too is like, guys, like think about this. Like these people that are going to Russia right now and they're praising how like Russia's great. I'm like, you realize like Candace Owens, you realize, like Andrew Tate, like someone just said he's there. You realize that you wouldn't be able to sit in Moscow and talk crap about Putin like you do in the United States and talk crap about Trump. Like that's not something that happened. You realize that, right? Like they would arrest you for doing that in Russia.
Absolutely.
But like these people they're like Russia's Christian and they're great and they're all like, I'm like it's propaganda, dude. Like you wouldn't be able to do that there. And everybody knows this, like, or at least they did know this until everyone started believing podcasters and everything that they say. It's just insane to me. It's insane to me. Which is like we're doing a podcast right now, so it's kind of funny. But it's just one of those things. It's just a lot of, I don't think, and a lot of these podcasters are not necessarily uninformed. They're informed. They know what they're doing. It's just the people that are watching them are uninformed and don't know
absolutely
the reality of the world.
Oh, you just hit the nail on the head, and that's like where I would really love to know how many American people take the time to read something besides just the headline on a story.
Yep.
Or even research the source. Mm-hmm. Like, don't take anything that I would highly recommend any of the people listening today, don't take everything that I'm saying as go research it for yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm not lying to you, but I promote people like looking up and doing like know what your sources are, because there's so much disinformation. It's probably one of the biggest threats that we face in the nation overall, outside of, some of the other obvious stuff, but like disinformation being one of those, because disinformation leads to other things, right? Like, so it leads to the lone wolf actors that's just had enough and he doesn't know what he's going to do. And then he spirals, and then what? He goes and does something stupid. And lone wolf actors are the hardest people to track or discover that something is happening. We don't do a good job in this nation of see something, or hear something, say something and report it. We don't do a good job of that. And when we do a good job of that, we don't do a good job of following up on it, because everybody's afraid of getting sued. And so they don't do it. And so until there's protections from, like, yes, there's HIPAA laws and all these stuff, but if you are genuinely concerned about somebody's welfare and their safety and the safety of other people, you should be legally protected from being sued under that type of stuff in order to, because I think that a lot of the stuff that we've seen wouldn't happen if those protections existed, but people they're worried about being sued. I mean, those are conversations I've had with people that have said, well, I didn't say anything because I was worried about being sued about it. All right. I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
And
it's just like the
therapist. So
yeah, it's like going and helping somebody, just in public, something happens and you go to help them and then they didn't want you to help them. And so they sue you. Like, so Good Samaritan laws are supposed to kind of protect you from that, but it still has happened before. You still have to pay for a defense to fight it. And then that costs money and time. And it's just, it's hard, man.
Yeah, and that's the big thing is like just because you're defended under certain legislation, it's not wide sweeping enough that like you shouldn't have to pay for your defense in
Mhm.
the if you are protected under that. Like I shouldn't
Mhm.
have to pay let's just say $20,000 because it's an easy round number to do math with. But like let's say the defense costs 20 grand. I shouldn't have to pay out that out of my pocket and hope that I get reimbursed one day.
Yep. Well, I mean, think about Kyle Rittenhouse. Think about how much it cost for him to, I mean, he got a lot of donations and, he wrote a book now and he's fine. But at the time, right? Like at the time, that's a significant amount of money just to prove that he was acting in self-defense. And
Right.
then, the court agreed with him, the jury agreed with him, and he was acquitted. But again, that costs, and I tell people this all the time, like, this is why it's very important for when you're carrying a firearm, like, that you are acting appropriately all the
Not only
time.
that,
Like,
but you have
yeah,
insurance.
yeah,
Like
have
keep the
insurance. Like, yes, like
be a
have insurance
member be a
because
member of the NRA and these other
mhm,
institutions that will back you legally so
yep,
that you are covered and you don't have to worry about that being out of your pocket. Like those things are
right,
important. And
right,
um and yeah, like it's amazing to me how many things get missed um because we're in this state of lawfare within our own nation and
hmm,
shouldn't be. Um and it's the way it is, and it's pretty disgusting, honestly. Um,
yeah,
I was looking for something to share with everybody, but it had to do with it was a graphic on disinformation, and then a picture of a Chinese bot farm that was discovered in the United States. Um, but I'll find them and send them to you, and you can post them later. But
yeah,
there's these bot farms are just spitting out, utilizing some AI and things, just spitting out a mass amount of disinformation, and it's coming from Russia, it's coming from China, it's coming from Iran, you name it, they're putting it out there. And I even did a report and sent it up. God, I guess it was 7-8 months ago now, but did a report on how, like, I don't know how many people pay attention to it, but with foreign reporting acts, like foreign nations are required to, if they have any type of operation going on within the United States, they're supposed to report it, right? Like if it has to do with, or if something's paid for by any nation, but Israel or the UK or whatever, and they're paying for something, they're supposed to report that so it's released and able to be found publicly by the people. And
hmm,
well, a lot of the problems with this though is that it's hard for the people to know that it's out there if they don't know where to find it. Right. And so
right,
um and the reason we did a report on this is we found a list of churches, and this all came about the time of yeah, it was about the time of Charlie Kirk getting assassinated, actually.
hmm,
Um, but it was a report of a foreign influence operation within the United States where they were geolocating around churches and utilizing uh, digital means to be able to do this. And so through ad tech data and different things and tracking people's cell phones, they were geofence you into going onto a church property, say it's somewhere here in Dallas or in um, DC or whatever, and then they could do targeted advertising towards you because you went to a church.
it's insane.
And so like the thought of that happening by a foreign government within our nation, like how are y'all allowing this to occur? Like
Right,
shouldn't, you know, So that way, when you're scrolling on your phone or whatever, you start to see these ads that change your way of thinking, by repetition. Essentially, you see it enough times, you're going to start to believe it, right? And so that's kind of
that's mainstream propaganda right there. Like that's like
mainstream. That's the psychology.
Repeat it.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's exactly what they do in all this type of stuff. And so like the messaging, whether it's from China or Russia or wherever, or Hezbollah, whatever, the messaging from those are all going to be like the same throughout. Like say China, let's just put them to the side. Put China to the side and say every United Front organization, the messaging is going to be the exact same from all of them. It's not going to differ as far as what that message and its intent is for. And the same is true for any Iranian proxy groups. The same is true for Russians, and there's a large amount of Russians in Mexico right now, and Ukrainian veterans, and cartels are hiring them and getting them over here for drone operations. So like that's probably another one of the biggest threats. We'll hit on this real quick. Is the drone threat. It's huge, and we're not prepared for it at all, which is why we're working on it right now, is trying to figure out how. And again, part of it's because of federal legislative stuff has to change, because Congress they haven't been smart and given authorities. Congress has to learn that they have to stay and this is what blows my mind about it, is they have the ability to, if they wanted to, but they have to be able to stay ahead of technology. Like we're behind in legislation when it comes to AI. We're behind in legislation when it comes to drones. We're always behind. Why don't y'all get off your asses and do some work instead of going on vacation? Let's play a little bit of catch up here, folks. Or maybe let's change some of the laws so you're not constantly out there campaigning, and like maybe we could get something done if like things are so vastly different from the way things were originally designed by the founding fathers, which were great, but because things have changed a little bit, we don't have to do everything the exact same way. But the principles, we should absolutely remain all the same. And I'm not saying change the whole voting and everything. I'm talking about like, let's get back to the brass tacks and how it should have been with term limits and things of that type of nature. Because then guess what? People are going to be more motivated to get things done versus procrastinate, where they say, oh, we'll be back next year. No big deal. Oh, we'll be back next year. No big deal. We'll just table it for now. Well, guess what, folks? We don't have a choice. You can't table it. People's lives are at risk. And Hezbollah is utilizing FPV drones every day in southern Lebanon against Israelis, like constantly at this point. So everything that we saw in Ukraine, just like what we thought would happen, has now migrated to different war zones. It's been happening in Mexico. So when's it going to show up in the United States? Is it FIFA? I mean, realistically speaking, when's it going to happen? Because guess what? Every one of those politicians that's put stuff on the shelf and said, I'll get back to it later, they're all guilty as charged, and they should be thrown out of office for wasting taxpayer time and not having the best interest of the citizens of the United States of America. They need to go away. Why? Because it's their fault. It could have been stopped and they didn't do it, and it's their fault. But they're going to be the first person to get on their high horse and step up onto the pedestal and try to be the savior. Sorry, folks, I don't want you to be. You're a treasonous asshole, and you don't deserve to be and sit in that space. And period. No different than I don't think that Joe Biden ever deserved to sit in the Oval Office. The guy's a coward. And I say that because the things that he did put the U.S. in our nation at large at such a huge risk that it's going to take a very long time for us to dig out of it, much less try to prevent everything that could come out of it. Like, people have already died, much more are going to die. That's just the reality from these criminals or whatever. Like, break it down to a very simple metric that people can kind of easily follow. But like what we said this last night, actually, any leader is going to spend 90% of their time dealing with 10% of the people. Well, how many people came over here from foreign nations during Biden's administration? A metric shit ton. Well, let's take 10% of 10 million, for instance. How many does that leave us with? It's a lot of people we got to try to get out of here pretty quickly. Well, guess what? We don't have that many federal agents. So like even if we were like, there's 365 days in a year, how many people do you legitimately think you can remove from the nation in a quick amount of time? It's not nearly as easy as people think it is. I mean, because you've got all the back end work on finding them first.
All right.
Like, and making sure it's the right people. And so really irritating and frustrating that like anybody that wants to sit back and try to defend Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, every member of the Democratic Party in my mind is like, that's willing to support that. They're in many ways, they're traitors in my eyes, in many, many ways. I don't see how you could be willing to support it, knowing the risk it puts every American citizen at. And like, I'm tired of hearing people say, oh, well, what about these people? Those people that's not the job. Doesn't mean I don't have a heart for them, but that's not the job. The job is this, and it's U.S. citizens. The job is not to have a heart for everybody else. The job is to care for and protect American citizens. And if you can't do that, we don't need you in office. Like, that quite literally is the role.
No, I agree. Oh, manager said the acting OD or the acting DNI that Trump just announced, Bill Polt. Is it Polt?
Uh-huh.
Like he has zero intelligence background. Neither did Tulsi, really, right? So that, everyone was, I don't know. It seems like the person who's running the highest office of our intelligence apparatus should probably have, I don't know, a little experience in the intelligence community. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe he comes in and maybe he's the change agent that's going to come in and fix the intelligence community, which
that was the problem.
Big thing.
That was the problem with Kristi Noem running DHS too. And that was the problem with and I agreed, Tulsi didn't either, but and I 100% agree with you, but like having, I think to a certain extent, I can see the other side of it, the counter argument, and that being that, well, at that level, you're more of an administrator and you're managing budgets and other things, and you're more of a politician than you are anything. But
there still has to be somebody that, like, I'm not saying they had to run the CIA at some point, right? They don't have to have that level, but at least somebody who was like, they did something in intelligence, whether it was military intelligence or some kind of intelligence, so that they at least have an idea. Because like Hegseth was like, some people don't like Hegseth. I do. I like him. I like him as a change agent for the DOD. He didn't ever get corrupted by the higher echelons of the military, as you probably, like how political it gets once you get into those higher ranks. He didn't ever get corrupted by that. And so he still, remembered the line units and the soldiers and what it takes, and the airmen, all the lower listed, all the little guys, and what they are actually needing and wanting. And then he brings that in, he doesn't have to be a joint chief and then now move over to this, right? Like that one I kind of like, but like this, I just feel like, just like Kristi Noem, right? Like somebody with law enforcement. It doesn't have to be somebody who ran, the FBI or whatever, but just like somebody who understands law enforcement and how it works, probably would be a little bit better in that role. And Yes, I mean, yeah, it is a administrative role and it's a budgetary role, but it's still part of the intelligence community. I mean, you should have some knowledge of Title 50 actions, and if you don't, then I don't know how much
pretty
good you're
sure
gonna be able to do.
pretty sure his billionaire founder, or I'm pretty sure being the grandson of a billionaire founder of a residential building group, Pulte.
Yeah.
Pulte Group is not what's going to provide you any insight into that position.
No, it just doesn't make sense to me. And like, there was no one already in the ODNI that like could.
That's a perfect example of giving a favor to somebody.
Yep.
Like, I wouldn't even want the job. Like, why would you even want the job if you didn't have a background in that? Nobody's going to respect you.
They're not going to respect you. If you have to come in and they have to give you a bare bones basic of what like intelligence, like just not even that, just like the format that reporting is done in, like just all the things, like I wouldn't even know that, right? Like I have a little bit like scratched the surface of it in the SF community, but and then with the like ASOT stuff that we do, but it's still nowhere to a level where like if someone was like, you want to go do this job, I'd be like, dude, I am not qualified for that. Like I would need to go work in the office for a year or two before I even feel like I would know what I'm looking at to understand this. So it's just sometimes it's like Trump does good things, and sometimes it's just like he just does these crazy off the wall things. Yeah, I mean, in a heightened threat environment that just make no sense. And this dude oversaw Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Cool. Yeah. So his firm had a big hand in what crashed the economy in 2008. That's great. Super glad to have him.
Yeah. Let's just give this guy insight to information he probably shouldn't be allowed to have.
So disappointing. I'm gonna have to go. I need to go walk around in the woods right now because it's just pissing me off just thinking about it.
Yeah. I don't know
why Amanda just ruined my morning.
Yeah, I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense at all. And yeah, Steve Witkoff. Yeah, like I get it, Rook. Like it's.
I'll tell you why.
And this is the problem. Like
why he moved him over. He was the Federal Housing Finance Agency director, is what he was. He moving him from that position to that one because he's a yes man. That's why he's doing it. Trump doesn't like people that don't question him.
You're right.
And that's a huge flaw. He has this inferiority complex, like that he doesn't know what he's doing. And he doesn't. He hadn't been like outside of his first presidency. He has more confidence than he did, obviously.
Right.
But he had never been in government. Didn't like at any level, any capacity. So, which is why like Trump needs to disappear when he leaves office and not ever come back to the Republican Party and allow the Rubios of the world to shine. Because they know what he knows what he's doing. Right. They know
people that understand how to govern, and like DeSantis. People are like, he doesn't know how to campaign. Well, okay, we can work on campaigning, right? We can fix that. That's a little part.
Right.
What he does know how to do is govern, and he knows how to govern.
Guess what? He also understands national security because he comes
that too. Yes.
From the community. I mean, he was a JAG officer for the SEAL teams. So
yep. So he understands that. I mean, and Rubio, I love what Rubio has been doing. He's the competence that he has shown has been amazing to watch. So that's great. I don't hate. I think JD Vance has just been semi quiet. I think
it's more of like you don't have a whole lot, like as a VP. You don't have a whole lot of influence. You're there in case something happens to the big man, but you're not like outside of that. It's
him running the anti-fraud kind of task force thing that he's pushing.
Right.
If they get some really big wins out of that, then he could kind of show his abilities there. Yeah. So hopefully that comes to fruition, and we kind of and I tell people having Rubio, DeSantis, and Vance running against each other. that, you know, with Trump out, not in that race, like Trump will do he'll endorse whoever, like, and that'll go somewhat. But once they get into the debates, you no longer have, you have, you know, adults in the room who are just, they're gonna attack some of each other's positions, right? But they're not going to do the same type of attacks we've seen in some of these previous GOP debates. And we're gonna get a good candidate out of it. We're gonna see who the best candidate is, and then hopefully that second place guy is going to join in lockstep. And because, like, think about it. I mean, if it's DeSantis, or I mean, I don't know who it would be. DeSantis would make the most sense to me. He's the one I like the most. People can disagree with me. That's fine. But if DeSantis is in, Rubio and Vance, they have a place. They have a place in the administration for sure, doing things. And then they're still young enough that they are going to have a chance as well, right? And we could set this up where we have very competent leadership that understands governmental processes and understands the left and how to defeat the left. You know, I mean, both, especially DeSantis. I mean, what he's done for the GOP in Florida, like, they should write textbooks about it, and this should be something that we're talking about all the time.
No, I hope Governor Abbott takes really good notes on what he's doing.
Oh, I don't think. I wish. I don't know. I think, you know,
I've said that a whole lot over the past few years.
I mean, what DeSantis has done there. I mean, that was a purple state. It was a state that we didn't know whether it was going to go blue or red. You know, and now it's deep red. Now it's like so deep red that you know, it would take them electing the worst governor in the world to just dismantle it, like, for it to go anywhere else. So, I mean, hopefully they don't do.
Outside of businesses coming to the state of Texas, Abbott has done such a poor job in this state. This state's a toss-up.
Yep, that's what's it's insane to me that, like, a dude like Talacaro, whatever his name is, Tellerico has a chance. Like, this is a guy that's so far left that believes in, you know, abortions up to birth. He literally did posts about how white people are the problem and, like, stuff like that. Like, it's just,
and he's a white person.
Yeah, and he's a white person, and he's so far left, and then the fact that he is going to get 40, you know, potentially 48% of the vote or something in Texas is wild to me. And it's just the Texas GOP has a lot of work to do. They need to figure out, one, I mean, like, we have, like you said, with Paxton and the corruption that's involved and all this stuff, and, you know, Cornyn wasn't better, but, you know, why are we forced to pick? This is like back when the race, like, and again, I like some things Trump has done, but, like, by no means is Trump the most, like, competent person that's ever lived. We can be honest about reality and talk about reality. But, you know, back when it was Biden versus Trump, you know, before Biden dropped out, I'm like, why is this it? Why is in what is supposed to be the most powerful, most dominant, most just smartest, best country that's ever existed? Why are these the only two options we have here?
I know,
and one of them being, like, legitimately has dementia or some serious, you know, Alzheimer's or whatever he ends up having. You know, something significantly wrong with mental capacity is one of the candidates. It's just it's insane to me. It's insane to me. But
I think that I think they legitimately thought that they could get by with it, to where under the table they could run things the way they wanted to without him really actually having much of a say so or not.
Oh, that's 100%. I mean, that's what his whole administration was. That Data Republican's been doing some great things. SK Dub, I had her on the show a few episodes ago, and what basically during the Biden administration, the government was run by 22-year-old interns.
Right.
You know, like, that's who was making all the decision. Yeah.
Right.
And it's insane. And the NGO, you know, ecosystem that exists and the scale that it existed under Biden, like, that's what was doing it. I mean, we're talking just a few nonprofits alone got over $6 billion under Biden to move illegal immigrants around the country. I did a whole article and thread about that, and no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to talk about Catholic Charities and the like 1.8 billion they got. No one wants to talk about what's it called, Endeavors, and you know, they got, and then Southwest Key got almost 3 billion. Like, it's insane the amount of money that was thrown around to move these immigrants to literally every single voting district in the country. They came in, they moved them, they helped move them to every single voting district in the country. So that's insane. Insane.
I found one of them. I just sent it to you. But it shows this is just for it's a supplier funding flows, but yeah, it shows just for
put this up real quick
connections. But yeah, it shows how many Chinese suppliers just for semiconductors there are that we're purchasing.
There we go. That is insane. So I can't even zoom it in big enough.
Yeah. So on the far left, you've got our B-2 Spirit bomber, the Minuteman III ICBM, our Ohio class submarine, and then at the bottom it's our Patriot missile systems.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the four colors flowing from left to right. Those are the four categories. That's what they are. And then in the middle, you've got the allegedly authorized supplier. And then who are their suppliers? The Chinese semiconductors on the right.
Yep. I mean, look at that top one, a DLA authorized supplier, Yangzhou Yangi Electronic Technology Company.
Right.
I wonder where that's from,
Right. Why are they even considered a defense authorized supplier? Doesn't make any sense to me.
This is so insane to me. So
DLA, for those that don't know, stands for Defense Logistics Agency.
Wow. Yep. Big problems going on for us in the future, for sure.
So, but yeah, that's just one example, and that's just 4 weapon systems, if you will. That's it. Mm-hmm. 4.
Just 4.
So, you can imagine an interesting note. So I did back in it was last year sometime. I did it was a discovery call with DHS Science and Technology Office. But it was open they were just going over a briefing of what's to come. And I just said, hey, I'm going to try something real quick. And so I got on, I pulled every email and every name that was on the call and who was in the chat. They said, go ahead and share your contact info if you wanted to, with your name, your company's name, and your contact info. Very first person, boom. I was like, this doesn't seem right. Something's off here. And just that, how you get that feeling and you just know. Well, I did. Yeah. I wound up going down the rabbit hole on them. Sure enough, it's a Chinese front. And they're registered in SAM, the whole bit, 100% a Chinese front. And it's a Chinese national running the company, trying to do business with DHS Science and Technology Office. So that's how you can't make it up, honestly. But why did I have to see that? Why is DHS? Why do they not have a counterintelligence person on the call doing exactly what I did?
Yep. The gaps are just so insane. And it's just we're just asking to be severely compromised and then attacked. And I always say this a lot, we can't be attacked kinetically from a military standpoint. But if they were able to cripple communications, if they were able to cripple, logistics fairly quickly through, drones, through all the different aspects that they could, once emergency services go down, once internet, water, power go down for more than 3 to 5 days in a vast area, so they don't even have to hit the whole country, just mass population centers, the unrest and the damage it would cause would take us decades to fix. I mean, if we could even recover from it. It's one of those. It's just.
And I think people don't. again, it goes down to but the threats that are here have been preventable. That's the problem.
Yep.
Like our electric grid, we could have protected it. We have the capabilities, and I'm not just saying it because of me, because it's another company that I brought into as a partner, and but we have the capabilities to stop and hunt Chinese malware within our critical infrastructure architecture, whether that's energy or it's oil and gas refineries or it's the water treatment facilities, you name it. We can do it. It's just a matter of the government's got to allow us to do what needs to be done and fill the gap for them.
Yeah. So Lion just asked, is it due to Leon? I hope I'm saying your name right. I'm sorry. Is it due to USA not having capabilities yet, or are we transitioning towards that goal? No, like I said, we have the capabilities to do a lot of these things. It's just we don't have the processes or the legal capacity to do them, from either the federal, state, local, whatever you're looking at, and private companies have a lot of capabilities to do things, but they're not allowed to do things. So,
right. Well, it's even in certain levels of the state government and it comes down to not just if the federal government would do it, then it would allow for everybody else to easily follow, or it covers the land as a whole. And so it can be done. Right. And so the state government can't outlaw it. Excuse me. And so that's where like some of my frustration is with some of this, because yes, the capabilities exist, but the authorities in order to utilize them. So for drones, for instance, Safer Skies Act was good. It's a start, but what it doesn't do is provide us the ability to, you have to, like, we're at that point in history where a business owner or any major corporation, business owner, or private entity should be able to protect their home or property from drones. It's what we should be able to do, right? Well, currently under Safer Skies, in order to be able to make that decision to whether you take down a drone or not, it's only left up to law enforcement, are the only ones that can make that decision. Well, which law enforcement? Is that federal? Are we leaving it up to federal law enforcement? Or are we leaving it up to state law enforcement? So now we get into who makes the call. How many jurisdictions are around DFW Airport alone? Do you wait until it gets onto airport property, or are you going to do it before? Like, you see where I'm like,
yep.
You just created more problems than you did solutions. So I appreciate it.
Yep.
That's
what government's the best at, honestly, just creating more problems and no solutions.
Yeah. Right. So like when it comes to that, like we have to be able to, like, you should be able to take a drone out of the sky if it's a potential threat to you, your property, or whatever, as a business or private rancher, whatever. You should be able to do it. And I think it has to get to the point to where it's treated like, in a sense, like Second Amendment type stuff. Because I can tell you, if I saw a drone and they were just taking pictures of my house and my wife is here, I have, even though the drone's not over my property, if I know that drone's taking pictures of my family, I'm more than happy to take it out, right, and shoot it out of the sky. So, but like, we've got to get past this. And that's where I said that, like, Congress and Senate have got to get ahead of things and stop being so far behind. And they want to be the savior, but they're not willing to do the hard work up front. And nobody's calling them out on it. Like, and nobody's raising the alarm bells at the federal level. But we're one quick, like, look at the drone threat from what happened at Barksdale. Like, we are not far from having a major incident with drones.
Right.
And
they're gonna test. They're doing tests. That's what a lot, like, probing. Like any time before you actually attack, you're gonna probe. You're gonna see what the response is.
So they came with 15 this time. What happens when they come with 100?
Yep. It's gonna be bad.
So, but yeah, that's.
Yep.
Let's see. But yeah, that's what I think those couple things are pretty big, along with the energy sector.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, like we got a intelligence-led operations is where we have to, it all starts and ends. So I find it kind of interesting that happened while we were talking today, that the new director of the ODNI got announced, or potential, like
he's acting director.
That's a bit frustrating.
Super frustrating. But
well, I mean, why? I can't control it, so I can't let it wrap me over the axle, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I was in a space the other day, and one of the people in there talking was kind of upset about, like, we know what a lot of these organizations are doing. We know the links they have to, like, the Neville Singham operations, like all these different foreign entities that are pushing things into our country right now. And they're like, why can't we just go, like, arrest them and stop them? And I'm like, I wish we could, I wish they would. Right. And, but all we can do is, like, give sunlight to it and hope that the right thing is done, because the problem right now, again, is we're completely reactionary. We're not going to fix problems before they manifest into a disaster. We're going to just kick them down the road. Like you said, kick the can down the road, and then we'll deal with it later when something comes from it. So, Americans are going to end up dying. We're going to end up losing a lot. And then we're going to decide to make changes after that. And sadly, that's how our government, and the federal government especially, but even a lot of state governments have been for a long time. And I don't know. I think, talking about it and hopefully discussing with the right people can get us there. But, we're also going to have some doing done. There's, like, people are going to have to get in that are doers and actually do the work, make the changes that are necessary, and fix the problems. And so,
right. And it takes it takes people that are absolutely all about getting, serious people solving these serious problems in being doers, and not just, like, figureheads opening their mouth about it. It's got to be like, I was taught as a young man, this is many years ago. I'm going to say I was, like, in high school, but I was taught never to take a problem to somebody unless I had at least a thought of a solution. It didn't have to be a good one, but at least it was something. And so, like, why are we, like, all the federal government has to ask is open. They just open the door and just ask the private sector what the problems are and how they can be fixed. And then they provide what they foresee as the problems. And I can assure you, if they just open that doorway to where it's a full back and forth conversation between both, they'll solve the problems very quickly. Because, again, the on a lot of these people in Congress and at the state and federal levels, like these career politicians, they've been detached from everyday society and the workforce and all of that stuff for so long that they don't know what they don't know either. And so, like, and that's just a realistic fact. Like, they have staffers that tell them what's going on, but that doesn't mean that they're actually retaining that information that they're told. And because I'm of the belief that they don't retain a lot of it at all. And because they can't speak competently about any of it, even if they're on certain committees. I'm like, how do y'all not know this? Like, this is, like, quite literally your job. And it's obvious that they're not even the ones that write the big, long, the reports for congressional staffers they put in a massive amount of work for what they get paid, and they're incredible at what they do. And because the amount of research they're willing to go through and do it's extensive. And I would give them all the kudos in the world. I don't care who they work for. The jobs are the same. They're doing the same amount of research. It's impressive what they can produce. But like, we've got to protect America's biggest thing. It's how we won World War II and beyond is our innovation sector is what sets us apart. And we've got to protect it.
Yep. I agree, man. I really agree. Well, yeah, I'm getting to the point where my baby's about to wake up, and it's going to be the whole rest of the day. But I think we touched on a lot of important things, and a lot of stuff that, I mean, I learned a lot too. A lot of things that I didn't know, so that's awesome. And hopefully you guys that are watching, you learned a little bit and kind of understand the problems that we're facing, and really it's going to take a lot of us calling out these problems and then just demanding that they be fixed before any of it ever gets fixed. And that requires you to, talk to your local authorities, talk to, the people that you're going to be voting for in your local elections. That's the easiest way to start. I mean, you can try to talk to federal, senators and House representatives. Maybe you'll get somewhere, but starting locally will get you at least in conversation. So I would say definitely go that avenue first. But PK, is great to have you on, man. Absolutely. And you want to put anything out? Hold on. What's your handle for X? So get people to follow you over there.
Just Orange Diamond.
Yeah.
CG, I believe.
Yeah. Orange Diamond CG. Yep. So everybody, please follow PK over there. And you can just Google the Orange Diamond Consulting Group and kind of see the work that they're doing and get some more information about all that great stuff that they're doing for us. And but yeah, man, appreciate you coming on, and glad we could have a good conversation about all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Stay in touch. Talk to you soon.
Will do, man. Appreciate it. All right. Thank everybody. Thanks. Next time.